All right, let's start off today. A couple of little things. All of yesterday's materials are posted. Yesterday's post-class slide deck, if you will. Go ahead and throw the other one away. I put all the stuff in the current one, and I updated it to what we did yesterday. On the video, for some reason, Canvas is not uploading the video. I had the issue with my welcome video, so I put it on YouTube. There's a YouTube link out there. So I don't know why. I uploaded it last night before I went to bed, and it failed like 4 times. I don't know why. I'll get that fixed for us next time. We're going to have a guest speaker today, Mr. Jitu Patel, super senior guy at Cisco, EVP. He works directly for the CEO. Great guy. However, I think he's great. You guys tell me. Before the end of class, you're going to get an email from Qualtrics. I asked for a little short, and I mean it's short. 3-question, what'd you think? Do you like them? Should we bring them back? And I do that for all of our speakers. So this will be your first one. So you'll get that in your inbox, before you leave class today. If you would, please give me feedback. I've kind of weaned through speakers. I try to get really, really good ones for you guys, but I want your feedback just to make sure. So you'll get that. So please, it only takes like a minute or 2. Won't be long at all. The other thing, I put our first posting on our discussion forum. I want you guys to see this, and I decided to give it to you a little early. It's from last year, but Wall Street Journal did an analysis on TikTok and how the algorithm works to drive the content feed that people see. I found it fascinating. And it's only 13 minutes. If you do it in double time, it's, 6.5. And by the way, I watch all videos in double time. And I even put my little trick add-on. I have this one for YouTube, one for Chrome, one for Safari. I hope you guys do it too. Out on the extra items tab, but 6 minutes, you can watch it. It's no problem. But I want you to have this before we meet again in November, because we got a crunched week. You're going to do 2 more cases this coming week. I know you're not going to do it this week, but after that, go watch this video before we meet November 3rd. Okay, I think that'll help our discussions because we'll do artificial intelligence November 3rd. I am going to do my very best to get case feedback to you as quickly as possible. Usually we have a month in between classes. It's no problem. But you have your second case is now going to be due a week from yesterday. So I'm going to work as fast as I can. I got travel this week and I got a new client I picked up, but I'm going to do my very best to get it back to you. I'll do my best. I can't promise, but I'll do my best. I did want to let you know that there are those handbooks available through the Cornell library still out there in case you need it. So it's out there. We want to help you do a good job. You still need the name tag. Huh? I know there's a business model there.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay. Everybody turned in the Moderna case, yes? We all got it turned in. Okay. Yes.
I was just wondering, you said you posted something in the discussion section. Where do you find that on Canvas?
The discussion section? On the left-hand side, there says discussions.
I don't think there's a button.
It's not there?
No.
Can you, since you have admin rights, go in there and make sure discussions is turned on? Should be. We'll get it there. It's usually in the column right on the side. We'll make sure. Annette will set it up for us. Okay, Jason. You want to kick us off on this? Thank you for volunteering. I appreciate you doing that. And I also appreciate it's our first one because we want to have a kind of a good foundation for where we start for our case analysis. So I really appreciate that. So, okay. In the case kickoff, the person usually kind of gets us set up and established of where we're going. I appreciate that. So Jason, what is it that what do we need to know about Moderna? What's happening in this case? Why are we reading this case?
So in this case specifically, it talks about some of the issues that Moderna.
Hang on one second. I'm going to do this for you. And actually, we're going to try to use these today. Number one for our speaker, but also the recordings. Hold on to that. The recordings are always the speakers, the mics are good, but they're not that good. So this helps. Okay. All right. Tell me again. I'm sorry.
So Moderna is pretty much a novel pharma company operating in the space and has adopted an approach similar to a big tech company that's attracted a wide variety of investors that wouldn't have otherwise wanted to enter into the pharma space.
Okay.
And despite this, they've still faced a few issues that throughout the case analysis throughout the case analysis, we've all read and addressed issues for. And so some of those biggest issues that I identified were being classified as a COVID-only drug manufacturer, which is something that they were very concerned with. The lack of commercialized drugs that they've put out onto the market, and their underdeveloped global vaccination distribution channels. And
That one more time?
so their underdeveloped global vaccination distribution channels,
Vaccine channels or,
like distribution channels for disseminating their vaccines.
Supply chain logistics.
okay,
And so now going into some of the basic facts of the case. So Moderna's obviously adopted a digitized data platform into their operating model, which has served as the core foundation for most of their business processes and has really differentiated themselves from other pharmas. And so many other big pharma companies often adopt a model of spinning out separate entities, which lead for specific diseases or medicines, which has led to data siloing and exacerbated their problem of.
okay, hang on, one second. I love it, but give me just a sec. So
Yeah, sorry.
talking about big pharma, what's different about big pharma? Why are we talking
So-
about big?
Big pharma companies have often adopted a different approach. So first of all, they haven't focused on their infrastructure of data sharing across different teams. And secondly, they often spin out various entities for their specific diseases or vaccinations and development to try to expedite the process of getting those to market. And this is very problematic since it's led to data siloing and has exacerbated the problem of data sharing across the different teams and leveraging knowledge gained from one area and applying it to some other disease or medicine.
This is big pharma, can't do that.
Yes.
Okay,
And furthermore, many pharma companies are not fully digitized, and therefore they can only operate in sequence rather than in parallel like Moderna can. So this really slows down development and testing processes because they have to learn by conducting trials one after another rather than being able to research and develop many different drugs at the same time and being able to seamlessly share insights.
okay.
And so in conclusion, spinning out a separate entity would be counterintuitive to Moderna's digitized data platform, which is the crown jewel of their operating model.
Counterproductive for Moderna?
Moderna, if they spun it out, because it
So you
would,
say a spinoff would be counterproductive for Moderna?
yes, based on their digitized data platform, because that's the core of, their entire operating model. And if they were to spin out a separate entity, it would make it more difficult to share data across the different teams.
Explain that a little bit more, why?
So if they were to spin out a separate entity, it would make that one specific entity maybe more efficient and productive, and they'd be able to bring a drug to market for that specific one more easily, but it would then hamper the overall processes that Moderna has as a whole, such as feeding back data into the corporate data channels. And they wouldn't be able to as easily leverage insights gains from that separate entity and apply it to other medicines and research processes.
Okay, all right, good. Let's get some basic facts on the case.
Sorry.
Who's the CEO? When's the time of the case? What's
So
the,
the CEO was Bancel, and he really prioritized
again, Bancel?
Bancel, I think it's Stefan Bancel,
Okay,
and he really prioritized the manufacturing in-house capabilities and commoditizing it in order to quickly deliver new products.
okay.
Yeah.
When were they founded? What's the revenues? What's the time of the case that we're talking about? Just give us some basics so we can kind of have a base to start.
I don't have that easily.
Okay, anybody can help them.
2010, thank you.
2010, all right, this is the time of the case, or
They were founded
they were founded, okay?
2021.
They were founded 2010, what else? They're making billions of dollars?
The time of the case was 2021.
They have not yet found any.
Case is 2021?
Yeah, I see that's the review.
Case
July
is
13th.
2021.
July 2021.
I see July
What's the
13th.
time of the case?
2028.
It took the guy up in Boston, I called him, took the guy in Boston a year to produce it, but what's the time that we're talking about right now?
Pandemic 2020, pandemic 2020.
Yeah, so what's the year?
2020.
2020, all right. We are all in 2020. let's put ourselves in January 2020. Okay, what's their revenues? They're making a ton of money?
No, they don't have much revenue because most of
Not much. How much is not much?
Yeah.
They don't have.
their negative,
No,
yeah.
nothing.
Nothing.
on
They're
the
making
market.
zero revenue. Okay, this sounds interesting. Do they have a lot of drugs in the marketplace already?
Not yet.
They have zero drugs in the marketplace.
1 in phase 2 and I think 9 in phase 1.
Okay, well, hang on a second. So it's zero in production. And give me those again.
1 in phase 2 and 9 in phase 1 of testing.
And how many?
9 in
Nine.
phase 1.
9 in phase 1. Okay. So they're working on something. Okay. We'll call this in the pipeline. Okay. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. What else should we have on board? Yes, Veen.
So
Someone handed the microphone. Thank you.
thanks. One thing I think is really important is that a big reason why Moderna is able to do so many things is that their knowledgeable approach itself is inherently different. They're trying to make mRNA therapeutics as a platform. So as a result, that like definitely the digitization, the integration of their technology, all of that enables better things. But the fact that they're using mRNA as like a single platform lets them learn from very different use cases on top of each other on how to best develop this, how to wrap this in the lipid nanoparticles, and what's the best way to use this. So I think that is a huge prospect on just this revolutionary technology that they've made on the applications that it has and the potential this has and what really let them make this thing so fast was sure they had that great integration with their technology, everything's digitized, but also as the like CEO said, even though they haven't had anything go to market yet, this is not their first vaccine technically. They made 9 other things and each time they learn. So it's kind of almost like a snowball effect where it starts out slow, but it starts getting bigger very rapidly towards the end. And because of that, they got this thing like to clinical 3 testing in 2 months, which is amazing and unheard of. But the other thing is that about keeping the like development as a separate team as a silo, I kind of disagree with that point because the main challenge they're facing there is really getting this out there. Whereas
Getting what out there?
getting this vaccine that they have made, that they are like their goal is to be the first in clinic. They have made this thing, it's going well through testing. They still actually have to get it in the hands of clinics, the distribution and final step. And that is a different problem, like I mean related but different from the aspect of actually developing these treatments. So it wouldn't so much be a silo, it would be good, I think, is that once they're in the pandemic, they've gotten this positive attention, it would be dangerous to fumble it up now, even though obviously they can't supply the entire market share. Depending on how good they are distributing, they can get a lot more of the market share that their vaccine is being used and produced a lot more. So I think that it's best for their efficiency to have a separate unit that's focused on the question of distribution. And in the
Like
case
spin it off on its own.
yes, and the
Okay.
thing is that like they're still within the Moderna broader thing, but not as integrated as the rest of it, because it's a different question that they're trying to do with distribution. Odds are there's going to be another pandemic in the next few decades, it'll come in use again. But really the thing is right now they have like gotten this huge lead over everybody else. And they managed to do this while still having these other developments in production, like they didn't stop work on the other stuff. They just kind of slingshot this one much faster. So they can
It'd be
keep,
faster if they spun it off.
yes.
Okay.
So they can keep working on the other stuff also, and if the vaccine happens to develop another terrible mutation, they can bring it back to the main thing and look at how they're gonna evolve their treatment, because that'll still build on their overall platform of mRNA. But the question of distribution, especially at this global scale, is fundamentally different from the rest of what they're doing. So it won't really hurt them. It's not so much of a real silo since the aspect itself that they're trying to solve is perpendicular to the rest of it. How do you say? Orthogonal.
Okay, this is interesting. So Vinci, you say they should spin off their COVID-19 area. Yes, to spin off. And Jason, you said no, they should not spin off, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and there's reasons for both. Anybody? What's the heart of this case? Why did I pick this case? Why are we reading this case? Why did this guy up in Boston that works at BU write this case out?
I think it's because this business just really accelerated straight through the S curve, right? Like, or crossing the chasm in this process due to the timing, the fact that they were prepared for a pandemic, their existing relationships, and then just massive capital influx from the government.
Okay.
Able to scale from, like, they were pretty nascent in some clinical trials, and then going all the way to late, like, human trials, stage 2 trials in 2 months, and then become like a household name. So they've essentially just just blown through gates that would normally take much longer, and is also where businesses would typically fall apart, in my opinion.
So you think it's just a matter of timing?
No, I think it's preparedness meets opportunity.
Preparedness plus opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the CEO's model was that he always wanted to be ready for a pandemic, and they want to be technology first and kind of virus agnostic, so they can flexibly scale and show their value in this method, right? So then they already have these relationships with BARDA and Fauci's team, so they could just quickly jump on the opportunity and show value immediately.
Okay. All good information. I'm going to ask the question again. What's the heart of the case? Why are we reading this case?
I think
You said timing. Okay. Timing. I would say that's for any business to be successful, timing is very important. Is that why we're reading this case?
I think it's also a question of, like, do they continue to go down disruptive innovation, or are they kind of going to systematically iterate on this separate business unit?
So you think the question here that we're asking is disruptive versus
It's kind of like, are they going to
Sustaining
fragment
innovations.
their focus? That's kind of how the question that I took it to mean.
where should their focus be?
Yeah, like,
Okay.
are they going to dilute it by doing it separately? Are they going to have their mission be overtaken by this one case and become known as like the COVID company, and not this MNR, not like Moderna, who does this amazing thing?
Okay. Give that to me in a nice, clean, tight.
Okay,
What are we trying to do?
define their future, right? So are they going to be known as just this one company that does COVID vaccines, or are they going to push forward specifically on the value of their tech stack, the product?
Okay, tighter. Anybody else want to help her?
Yeah, go for it.
What's the heart of the case that we're looking at? I want to get that on the floor. I saw some hands over here, but I don't see them anymore. Let's go here.
So also, the case also talks about how, unlike their traditional big pharma companies, Moderna started off as a very technological savvy company. Their focus from beginning was on about data integration, building on those processes, and they wanted to build that data so that they could, in the future, focus on AI technology. So
Future focus on it, or are they focused on it now?
they are also focused on it, but they wanted to build that data backup also so that they have enough information to train their models based on AI.
Okay. So what is the heart of the case? What is the tight question that we're trying to answer in this case?
I was gonna say, is what they're doing working, and should they continue doing it? Like, because
Okay,
they've been
well-
disruptive,
Do you guys think Moderna did some good stuff?
yes.
Is it working? Okay, we answered that. What's the heart of the case?
Well, I think it's, should they continue doing it this way? Like, the question.
Do you guys think they're doing something wrong? No, they should do it this way. They're being very successful. That's not why we're reading this case. But good points, absolutely, you know.
my point of view is they are doing a lot of things very differently, and most of those things are unheard of and they are working. They didn't happen before, they are happening right now. Right from their approach to the entire their core solution. It is not like traditional pharma companies, it is extremely digitized, and they follow a platform approach which is technically unheard of when it comes to
Yeah.
anything to do with bioengineering. So
Yeah,
I think that it is a big traction, and they are creating a platform in healthcare which doesn't exist anymore. And
okay, let's get really fun. And here's the thing, as a business leader, we're all gonna gather and solve problems. I'm gonna call a meeting of the whole team. Here we are, yay. What's on the agenda today?
To decide whether to spin out a new entity or to stay as an integrated entity.
Yes, so what we're trying to do is answer this big question. And I'm gonna help you with that. Should we, Moderna, spin off?
A new entity,
Go ahead.
spin out a new entity.
Someone give her a microphone, please. Should Moderna,
It's not working.
oh, just turn it on.
To spin.
There's a button right on the side.
To spin out a new company to focus on COVID vaccine, or the incoming coronavirus business.
You could have stopped there. Yeah, this is what we're trying to like really figure out here. This is our heart of our question. Should Moderna spin off a new company? And then, to focus on COVID. Again, things that executives love today, like, what is it? Should we or should we not spin off a new company? Boom. So already Vinny says, yes, we should. And Jason says, no, we should not.
Does it have to be a new company? Couldn't it be like a separate kind of organization within Moderna rather than actually?
Okay, you want to change this to org?
Yeah.
All right, is everybody okay with that? All right, okay, spin off, there's multiple things in that, yeah. Okay, company or what, I mean, they asked it 2 or 3 times in the case. What, did they use company or org? I can't remember.
Yeah, department, organization, not company.
Okay, deport, org, new code, department, whatever, something separate. I think the key code word here is separate and spin off, right? Okay. From this point forward, everything we discuss should be knowledge that helps us answer that question. We have to figure this out. This is what Bechtel is sitting there in, I guess, December 2020 is when he was asking this question in the case. So he's kind of gone through this process, and now we've got a drug in trial, like, oh, what should we do? This is kind of hard. Now there's some other things we want. Any other sub things you want to answer here? Yes, sir.
I had a quick question.
Okay.
So can we establish some differentiating factors between org and department in the sense where my whole argument is that
Well, let's just answer it real quick. What did it say in the case? It asked it twice, and I know it's like the last sentence in the case or something, and then there's one about a third of the way in the case.
It's separate unit,
Separate what? Unit. Okay, they called it a unit.
which feels generic.
I'm sorry?
Feels generic. It feels like you can
Yeah.
come up with a definition for that.
All right, does that help?
yeah, it kind of does, because my whole argument was if they're a separate unit, there's no knowledge or data sharing amongst.
All right, that's
unit.
what Jason said too. And like, so we're gonna put that here. Well, let's just put it here. If we do this, it equals no knowledge sharing. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Okay. But if we do it, all these good things come out.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we have a business strategic decision to make. All right. All right. And by the way, I know like we're not wearing the mask anymore. Like, put yourself back in even February 2020, before this country and probably most of your other countries. Were you in China at the time?
No, that's
Okay, you were here.
I was in Shanghai.
You were in China at the time. When did you guys lock down?
I think
Or at least Wuhan. When did Wuhan lock down? In February?
January.
It was January. Oh, even earlier. Okay. But only Wuhan, correct? And then no one could leave that province?
In December, then locked down a month later.
It locked down a month later. So everybody was still out partying for New Year's Eve and then Wuhan locked down?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's kind of hard to remember now, but think about yourself, March 20th, 2020. Like everything just overnight shut down. This is the time period that the CEO, Mr. Benchell is going through. So business decisions might be a little heavy at this point. So he is still in lockdown, at least Boston, Massachusetts, and Cambridge. And I'd say he's really asking this question in December 2020, something like that, because he had already had. Actually, let's put the timeline on the board. This will help us figure this out. So someone help me with the timeline. What's the first thing we need to put on the timeline for this?
First case.
Give me the timeline.
The first incident was discovered in Wuhan.
Yeah, so when did they
January,
get the sequence?
December 2019.
What is it?
December 2019.
They got the sequence December?
No, but the sequence January
case.
11th.
January 11th.
The gene sequence.
Okay, gene sequence, yeah.
What was it?
January 11th.
All right, so let me just do a timeline. So it was January the 2nd? 11th, okay, that's what I thought. So they got the sequence on this date, right? All right. China posted it, virology.org or something like that?
Yeah.
Then what's the next thing that happened? How long did it take them to sequence it or to get the first component piece in? Yes.
2 days.
2 days. 2 days. All right, and then what was the next one?
February 7th, phase 1.
February
February 7th.
Someone grab a microphone.
February 7th, phase 1 clinical study of vaccine.
The
February
7th?
7th, phase 1 clinical study.
January 7th?
February
7th.
February 7th, okay, good.
February.
And then,
February 7th. So this is less than 30 days right here.
mhm.
And what was it on February 7th? It was a candidate?
Phase 1 clinical study of the vaccine.
Oh, wow, okay. When did they have the candidate ready? It was between here, right? They were ready for phase 1, February 7th, but was that their candidate?
I think
Or did phase 1 start January 7th?
Feb 24th, they sent the vaccine to NHI.
Say it with the microphone, the 24th of February?
Yeah, February 24th, they sent the vaccine to NIH.
Okay, so that's when they handed it off. So it didn't go phase 1 here, right? So NIH got their candidate. This is a candidate, right? On the 24th?
Yeah.
Then what happened on February 7th? Was that when they had it kind of like
they made
in the can, in the bottle, ready to ship?
the
That's ready
first
for phase
clinical
3, I
batch.
think.
We manufactured the first
Um,
batch.
Sorry.
They manufactured the first batch on Feb 7th.
Okay, so this is the first go they had. Look how cute this one is. Okay, so I'll call this the first one. Like in a bottle, ready to ship, put in someone's arm if someone was willing to take it. Then they went to NIH, ready to start this whole process, February 24th. Then what happened?
March 16th.
You gotta be aggressive. Let me hear you.
On March 16th, they did their first human test, or inoculated their first human volunteer.
March 16th, human. And this is phase 1, right?
Exactly.
Phase 1 trials?
Yeah.
March 16th. Wow, they just got this thing January 11th. All right, then what happened? How did we all get it in our arm? Give me the process. I want us to figure out what's happening here. After March 16th, went to phase 1. When to go to phase 2?
Phase 2.
Phase
I thought there was a picture of the timeline in there, was there not?
So it just says, it's end of July 2020 was when phase 2 started.
July 2023 was what?
2020 was, July 2020 was when phase 2 started with 600 volunteers.
Phase 3.
So that's phase 2, all right.
Phase three. So phase two,
That's phase three.
it just says
is phase
late spring, phase two begins.
Do you know like May?
Gerard must know it, because he's got a smile going. You got the information, you know, share it with all of us.
It just says in spring 2020.
In the spring, all right, that's good enough. And then by phase three, when did it go out? Because
July 2020. July.
July. All right, so maybe we'll stop here. And then at this point, he's asking this question December 2020, right? Like it's out of his hands. It was kind of out of his hands right here, wasn't it? Like they're like, go, kind of. And then I know it went to phase three in here somewhere. I'm gonna say summer.
July 2020 is phase.
July, so did phase one and two the same time?
No, that's just a mistake on the board.
This thing was
End
phase
of
two.
July 2020 is phase three.
I have the timeline from ChatGPT.
Just give me the basics, yeah.
Okay, so basically in
Microphone.
spring, we
Yep.
have phase two begin, date not specified, where they start to test around 600 volunteers for side effects.
All right, you can use the microphone there beside you.
Okay. And then the next one, phase three begins in July 2020 to understand efficacy and adverse reactions.
Okay, we still have a laptop back there, that's good. All right, so and at this point, it's basically up to the FDA and Dr. Fauci to say yay or nay, right? Or the NIH, I guess. Yeah? Is this all bureaucratic from this point forward? Government bureaucratic?
I mean, they started to get some funding in this space.
Well, they got funding back here, didn't they? So when did they first get their first funding? It was like 480 something, wasn't it? From Broda?
483,
Okay, 43 when? February 7th?
April 16th.
April. So we had funding one here, and that's funding one or two?
Funding one,
Funding one, and that was 482 or something?
43.
43, all righty. 483 million, and then they got another set of funding in what date?
July 26.
July, so right after phase three started.
The day
One day
before,
The day before, oh, even better.
and then it's 472 million.
472 million, so almost got $1 billion here. Ready to go. The government's throwing money at them, good problem to have. But obviously, they believe in it, something happening there. When I look at this timeline, how does that normally flow here? Anybody in the pharmaceutical industry, present or past? Okay, usually I have a pharma person in here. Northern New Jersey, oh my gosh, pharma everywhere. Some more time?
Pharmaceutical manufacturing and supply chain consulting.
Did you consult with them?
Yeah, so I helped build a data system so that they could place orders.
Roche, SmithKline Beecham?
PCI,
I don't know if you see.
they're a contract pharmaceutical manufacturers.
Okay,
So PCI is a contract pharmaceutical manufacturer. What that means is in pharma, businesses might produce their own products. So that could be anything from like Advil to Pepto to vaccines, et cetera.
okay,
But it might be more efficient for them to outsource that. And so they give essentially the recipe and maybe some bulk material, which could contain like secret sauce or whatever. And then the pharmaceutical manufacturer produces it, labels it, and then ships it on their behalf.
and why do they outsource it?
Possibly like economies of scale and maybe to help with demand if they can't fill their own orders.
Well, let's take a look at who we're talking about, like pharma or big pharma, like you got Roche, you got Novartis, you got Pfizer, you got SmithKline Beecham.
Yeah.
These are not small companies, are they?
Yes.
All one conversation. Are you still with us, Vinny? Let's all stay together, one conversation this week. So they're big or small companies?
They're both.
They're massive. They have money like you wouldn't believe. So do they outsource because it's, we don't have the time or energy and money?
I mean, in some of these cases, it might be faster to get product to a certain geographic location.
Okay, I'll give you that. That's
To do
absolutely
that. And then if there's some kind of surge in demand,
true. Uh-huh,
they might need some auxiliary support.
okay.
They also might do this for exploratory like development
For export, okay, I like that. What else? Anything else?
That's what I got.
Okay, that's good. This is absolutely a reasons why you, does Moderna outsource? Anybody?
Yeah,
Sean?
they do. I think they partnered with Lonzo was the company to like handle a bunch of their distribution.
For me, Lanza.
Lonzo. Hey. Oh, Lonza. Yeah, sorry.
Like that, okay? American company?
Swiss company.
Swiss company, all right. What'd they do about this partnership? What's so important about it?
Is that they had the like capabilities to be able to distribute on a global scale, manufacture and distribute. They had that kind of supply chain set up already.
Okay.
Whereas Moderna didn't have that scale as of yet.
Okay, what else? No, go ahead. It helps with the recording and just, why is that one not working? See if Amit can help you.
It's working.
You just hit the button. They're all fully charged.
Hello.
There we go, all right.
Yeah, so they partnered with Lonza and Catalent. This not just helped them to, help scale up the manufacturing, but also it helped Moderna to free up its resources for focusing on its other developments, right? So this was one of the reasons they did outsourcing.
They did outsourcing, other outsourcing, not just one.
No. So by giving contracts to Lonza and Catalent, it didn't just help them scale up manufacturing, but it freed up Moderna's resources also to focus on other aspects of development process.
So Moderna could focus on other pieces of their process.
Because COVID was not the only thing they was focusing on that time.
Okay, why did they pick this company?
Because they are a highly digital company, Lonza,
Okay,
and they can also produce at scale.
highly digital. Why was that important?
Considering that Moderna actually is also a digital company, that must have resonated with them, and also they needed agility at that point. Going digital could have provided them data, which would have improved efficiency.
Okay, so I'm a digital company in Moderna. I kind of work with other digital companies here. Doesn't that make sense? We're going to go to our only pharma experience if we can. Are pharmaceutical companies very digitized?
No.
They're not. So this big pharma, these guys with all the big bucks, been around for some of them more than 100 years. I wrote slow here, not digitized. So is that another reason why they do contract manufacturing? Or is it a hindrance to it?
I mean, it is a problem because everything that they're sending back and forth is primarily in Excel docs. And we saw in the case, and we all know, that creates a whole bunch of errors and it's not real time, et cetera. There is an effort with the FDA to innovate the digitization across medical devices as well as pharmaceuticals. Is just very early days and is a lot of industry collaboration. There's a lot of reservation for these companies to move forward with that.
Yes, I agree. Didn't seem to be a problem for Moderna, did it? Or was it? It was? It wasn't?
They essentially tried to automate from the get-go and create as many digital processes, right? So they'd go one unit at a time and create automation islands so that they could increase the accuracy and streamline the process as best as possible. And that's a requirement that they also had for their partner in manufacturing, their quality management system. So that way they could better collaborate and integrate.
Okay, good. This sounds interesting. What are automation islands? And by the way, when we're early in a case, and Amit's here sitting dying to give you some points and you have none on the board. This is a perfect time to raise your hand and get points on the board. I'd love to hear from everyone in the case. What are automation islands? We all read the case. Everyone should speak on case studies. Yes.
So what they
Microphone.
So as other people mentioned is that
Make sure it's on. Or speak really
Hello?
loud.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So as other people mentioned is that a key aspect of Moderna is that they were using like the latest technology wherever possible for improving efficiency. And so part of that was that they were automating processes, not just actually to make it more efficient, but also to reduce errors. Where they described that one time the CEO came across somebody actually manually putting the DNA sequence into Excel. So if there'd been one mistake, the entire effort would have all gone to waste. But however, they don't want to automate too quickly. You might end up making something automatic and then realizing actually we need to do it completely differently, and that's a massive waste. So they would do automation islands where they kind of go to certain areas and then slowly automate them and kind of build it up until you have like a single, once like it's functioning, then you kind of connect them all together so that you have like a long automated sequence. But by starting with islands and like smaller areas of automation and then kind of having a short-term hybrid structure, it really lets you kind of make sure you're doing what you need to do and getting the technology working as you want.
Okay, I'm gonna say perfect first, then connect.
Yeah.
Okay. Good idea or bad idea?
Great idea.
Why is that a great idea?
It lets them do things much faster, much better also.
Faster? It's faster to go through all this testing and training and then.
Long term, yeah, is that
Long term, I agree, yes. Go further, then we're gonna jump over.
sorry?
Go further and then we're gonna jump over.
I'd say is that because they were from the beginning thinking about things way in advance. They're not just like buying that factory, building this automation equipment. Even the relationships that they built, all of this was much done like for years in preparation. And as Cece said earlier, I felt that really captured this thing is that the years of preparation and the opportunity together is what really enabled them to take off like this.
Okay, nice, thank you. Go ahead. It helps for the recording. When I listen back to this, I can hardly hear us in the audience, so thank you.
Building it this way reduces points of failure. So you're building them independently, you're stabilizing them, and then you're merging them into a bigger group so that the entire system doesn't fail when one thing fails. And they replicated this at multiple points, as mentioned in the case also. They like, for example, they worked on analog processes, got them right, and then they digitized. So it's all about a calculated step, stabilizing it and moving to the next thing and integrating it. It's a theme across.
Yes.
I have a point on this that's like slightly tangential, but like the same thing happened in like Tesla, for instance, where they realized they built an automated factory to begin with.
Okay.
And then when they were trying to like ramp up productions for like Model 3, like I think they realized, or Elon Musk realized, that it was actually a mistake to build all automatic to begin with. So then they realized that to go back and like build the process manually and then figure out what was more efficient to automate and not automate. So like how it ties back to this is like, well, there's certain ways of like, you don't just like digitize everything.
Right.
Because it's all like linked to each other. So,
do you drive a Tesla?
I wish.
Okay. What made you think of that? What like
automation islands, and I just read the book.
Yeah, he did it too. Mr. Musk did it, and I hear quite rough at their Fairmont facility when they first started doing it.
Yeah.
But they got it down, didn't they? What do you guys think about this process? Just sidestep here a minute. We're talking about automation islands, digitizing processes. What are your thoughts on this? Good thing, bad thing? Does it take extra time? Does it kill your staff? Is it something we should do? Why don't these big companies here do it? I mean, it sounds pretty good, right? Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's about going from historical data to predictive and prescriptive analysis. I mean, whatever we have gathered so far, how we're gathering it, it's an ongoing process, where companies are now transitioning, analyzing data. But what to do with data is what comes in prescriptive and predictive analysis. So that's where everybody's going, and that's where we find our key takeaways, like identifying KPIs, drawing relationships, visualizing those, up till the point that we could derive notifications from those. For example, consider a mini manufacturing plant where is this events in future, this machine is about to fail. That's what they can draw from the historical data. So it could be patterns, it could be thresholds. So it is something definitely we should do.
They should do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The question is, why doesn't everybody do it? Sorry.
I want to hear your opinion.
Why doesn't everybody do it? And
Why
I think they said at some point in the cases that it's very difficult if you don't do it from the get-go, which is what Moderna did. Right?
Why is it difficult?
To do it if you don't do it from the get-go, because I think you then have to adapt your whole business, and every team has to adapt to this innovation, technology, automation, whatnot, and it's very difficult to implement if it wasn't there from the start because you're already busy with so many lines of business. Probably my take.
What wasn't there from the start?
The technology and innovation and the
So your thought here is if you're a big pharma and you have a bunch of tech in place, even though it's not quite digitized, that tech is kind of hard to re-engineer to do this.
Wire your teams, and you have to get through so many barriers, I guess. You have to manage teams and make sure that they understand how to use the technologies and how to basically get this in their everyday lives, professional daily lives. And it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. And if you do it from the start, it's much easier to implement this.
All right, so I'll definitely give you that. It is much easier to automate. Easier.
Could you use a different color expo marker? It's a little hard to read the orange.
I'm sorry?
Could you use a different color expo marker? The orange.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll go back to black. I'll go back to black. Thank you. So it is easier to, but isn't it easier to do everything from a blank piece of paper? So you said it's really hard. It's difficult to do. Should these big pharma companies do it? Or they just, this is what we got?
I think what a lot of companies have done is to, instead of trying to implement it in their core business, is to basically do mergers and acquisitions, right, of smaller companies that are digital native companies or digital champions. And we've seen companies in pharma do it, but also in every industry, beauty, etc.
Okay, so I run an old school 100-year-old heavy industry company. I shouldn't even attempt to do this?
You can, but it's going to take time, effort, and you might die back.
Oh my God, it's so hard. Isn't that why we go to school here? Like, we can figure this out, can't we? Let me ask you this. After this occurrence, did these guys try to do this? And this is not in the case, obviously. This is you and your knowledge. Did they look at Moderna and BioNTech and others and go, oh, isn't that cute? We're not going to do it, though. What did they do? I mean, your own knowledge. It's not in the case, obviously.
They hopped on board. Everyone started.
They have to. Yeah, listen, this is what the competitive marketplace is doing for them here. I agree with you that it's difficult to do, but actually wouldn't automation islands help in that respect? Because you can't change the whole big system in these big pharma companies. Some of these are 100-year-old companies. But do you see the value that's in these automation islands of just take one little component of your business process, see if you can fix it and get it going, and then lock it in. Isn't that what these innovation islands were for them? Weren't they? I don't know. You tell me. Yes? No? Okay.
It doesn't dare.
Okay, no problem. You can jump in anywhere. So this was a positive or negative for Moderna?
Positive.
It's a positive, a very big positive, isn't it? It's a good thing, right? Extremely good thing. I want to go back to this contract manufacturing. We went to Lausa, right, the Swiss company here. Tell me about the makeup of this company. They did not manufacture or they did manufacture? Love to hear from everybody on this. Jason.
They did manufacture. They did a big manufacturing plant in Switzerland that allowed them to easily distribute whatever they produced to the rest of Europe.
Who had one in Switzerland? Lausa?
Didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, they were in Switzerland, but I'm asking about Moderna.
Yes, they have.
They did. What? Tell me about that.
Norwood.
In Norwood. What's Norwood?
It's the location. I don't. Yeah.
Beautiful place in Massachusetts. Yes. What's Norwood?
They have a factory there.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Moderna says.
Yeah, 1 hour.
45 minutes. Yeah. July 2021.
Anybody. Why? We just heard about contract manufacturing as the way Big Pharma does it. Why does this teeny tiny company named Moderna have a factory? Go ahead.
They wanted to do their own manufacturing, but because
Why?
it's integrated and it's easy to control. That's how I would look at it.
Say it again.
It's integrated with their system and it is easy to control.
Okay. Why did they integrate it in? They could have done this, right? There's a whole bunch of companies. Laos is one of them, matter of fact. Why did they do it?
I think.
Or yell till the microphone gets to you.
I guess in like typical big pharma companies, typical process is you do R&D and then you go into manufacturing. By having their own manufacturing plant, they're able to push their products to production way quicker than is like typically seen in the industry. They're able to test, like iterate and produce.
Yeah, so this was actually a significant benefit for them, wasn't it? How do they view, why are they so keen on digitization? Let me ask you that. Two main reasons, but why?
For me, it's like, I think the ability to like create algorithms and models that you can repurpose towards like COVID, for example. They were able to fully pivot their resources towards this singular virus. And these things had been developed in the 10 prior years of company existence. And their learnings from developing those models helped them with the repurposing itself.
Okay, so it builds on the learning. They learn from the data. They gather more and more. They perfect things within automation islands, bring it into the process when it's ready and not before, which is nice. So why did they need Norwood in this process? Relate that back to Norwood?
I think that they, again, because they wanted to distribute on a global scale, and I don't think Moderna had that ability. Norwood, their Norwood plant was about an hour away from where Moderna operated.
Yeah. Why is that good?
Just makes communication and company dealings easier to handle.
Okay, so they actually have this, right? It's a good thing, right? What's the heart of what Becknell is doing here at Moderna? He has a digitized platform, making everything digital. He's got a couple things in queue. He's learning from all the data he has because he's keeping it, and he's got the algorithms that he's building the data from. He's doing these in automation islands. He even has his own little plant to play with, less than an hour away from headquarters, so he can just drive over there and talk to everybody. What is the process they're doing in this plant that makes it kind of unique? And I'm going to come over. Let's do it under here because this is where they're putting the process together. How does their process work? How do they get a vaccine in your arm? Yes.
Well, they had multiple like phases within the factory, and each one would kind of play into another in the sense that they would learn from what worked and what didn't work in one element of another. And that, like, I think those elements were like R&D, the clinical trials, and personalized vaccines.
Okay, go spend the time on the R&D. How do they start from here? What's their benefit here?
So in my opinion, I think that they were able to like learn, like if they started from manufacturing and led into R&D from that, they're able to like see how technology was applied successfully, and like what worked about their different products that they would then manufacture and what did during the manufacturing process. So they can go back and iterate and improve on those to make their manufacturing processes even that much more efficient.
Okay, so by actually doing it, and creating the drug, the vaccine, the thing that they're gonna put in someone human's arm, but it's not just vaccines. They're actually learning in that process and also learning how to make it, right? So, and they had their own way to make, because they have a Norwood, right? So this includes not only let's say the discovery and the development of it, but it also includes the production of it, right? They discover something as a drug, they develop it in their little lab, usually in a computer, and then they can actually go produce it down the street in Norwood. Maybe not at scale, but they can produce one, right? Yes or no? Yes, okay. We're gonna dive into this production a little bit. What are they doing to make this thing work? Why did they need their own Norwood? And by the way, do you guys remember how much they spent on Norwood?
$125 million.
Louder?
125 million.
How much? 1.5?
125.
125 million. And they got money just burning in their pockets, right?
Yeah.
They're loaded, right?
Yeah.
No, they're a startup.
They had like
Do you guys remember what percentage of this was of cash they had?
10%.
10%. They're spending 10% of what's in their wallet on this high-end factory. That's a big bet for a startup. So there must be something unique about this manufacturing process. What is it? To produce it. What's unique here? Yes, sir. Evan, yay.
No, Tom. It gives them vertical integration. And
Okay, I agree.
It allows them to produce these drugs and vaccines much quicker than
So it's
traditional.
faster, true.
Than traditional pharmaceutical companies could.
Okay. So what's happening in this process? What makes it kind of unique? I'm not going to ask you to be a biologist here, but give me a little bit more to go on.
In terms of like the robotics they use, or
So
highly automated process.
What is an mRNA? Messenger RNA. Is it DNA? No, what is it? Go further.
I would say it's the like it encodes proteins, and the proteins.
Okay, so it's a protein. What's special about this protein? Microphone. What's special about this protein?
That it encodes for a protein.
Okay, it encodes. Is it DNA?
No.
It's not DNA.
Nucleic acids.
So what does it do? What does RNA, messenger RNA, do?
It basically moves the protein that's encoded in the DNA, moves it to the cell so that the cell can actually make the protein. So it's basically
it tells it how to make it, right?
Yeah.
Make this protein. So it's like an instruction set. So if you can get mRNA in your arm, it will have instructions of how to create the antibody to the thing it's trying to attack, right? How does it get there? And this is where we get a little biology majors here, but
Is
mRNA a very stable molecule?
No, I think they transport it with lipids or something.
A lipid, okay. So they have to actually deliver it through these lipids, correct? Have you guys ever tried to get a little molecule inside another little molecule and keep it whole and so it didn't break apart? And very difficult. Very difficult. Guess what? They have a state-of-the-art factory in Norwood. They can do that. Is this important to them or not important to them?
Very important.
Very important. Why is it very important?
I mean, the whole thing is making this mRNA therapeutics platform. So being able to do that is actually making it. That's the
Yeah, actually making it. This is actually a key part of their process, is it not? This isn't just thinking it up and looking at it on the computer and then pushing it in the lab. This is actually part of the entire process upon which they are working, is it not? Yes or no?
Yeah.
It's kind of a key part, actually, because if you can't get the thing to be stable in a lipid, your vaccine doesn't work. And guess what? Our friends over in Switzerland, they have a bunch of digitized things. It's very simple. We could actually just send them digital. We don't have to email an Excel spreadsheet. Makes a nice partner in this process. Why did they go with these guys again? You're giving all your points away. Yes.
Given that they're very rapid growth, they thought it'd be good to partner with somebody who's more experienced. So not only was this somebody who's in the digital area and has this experience, there's also that nice thing that the factory locations were good, and they also felt from prior experience that a nice trust-based relationship. So overall, that company scored very high, so they were able to get the partnership in like 3 months instead of.
Yeah, Norwood's nowhere near big enough to do the production they need, is it? So you're gonna have, once you perfected it in Norwood, you got the process down, you can tell it to someone else. Tell it to someone who thinks like you, who's very digitized, global scale, other kinds of things. It's a good thing to have, right? This is part of their whole process. This is part of what they do. Why then are we so concerned about this question about whether Moderna should spin off? And I'll go back to Jason if I don't hear anybody else talk. Repeat again what you described earlier as why this was the question we weren't going after.
Well, they wouldn't be able to re-leverage their existing data infrastructure and underlying, sharing mechanisms. They wouldn't be able to reuse their existing technologies and processes in this, separate standalone entity.
And why is that important?
Because then they'd have to build it all again from scratch, and they wouldn't be able to leverage existing tech. There'd just be much greater costs associated with building that infrastructure back up for a separate organization.
Is that how these guys do it? Not doing it, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And how long does it take them? Because if I look at this timeline, and I'm not a pharmacist, by the way, and I'm definitely not a biologist, but they had something in the little jar in less than 30 days. Here are multi-billion-dollar companies that have been doing this for decades, some into the century. How long did it take them?
2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years is typically the length of the cycle.
2 to 3 years? And then how long was it for a typical drug to get to market?
15 to 20 years. 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, I was saying over 10, but if you 15 to 20 seems like a long time, but the case said it, I can't quite remember, but definitely over 10 years. That's the way, smallpox and chickenpox and all those vaccines were developed that way. That's a long, long process, ridiculously long. So the reason I'm coming back to this is that this is part of their process and they want to digitize so they can segment these islands of automation. And the big question here is if they should spin it off or not. Jason's telling us that if they do that, they won't have knowledge sharing, which could be a bad thing. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. If we spin it off, why will they not have knowledge sharing? They still built it as a platform, right?
Okay, you said no, so answer that question. If they spin it off, why would they not still have knowledge in it? You said here, we'll still build knowledge.
Yeah, but the thing is the knowledge itself, that when they spin it off, it's not a question of remaking it, they've already made it. The question that they need to, why they need to spin off is solving the question of distribution, which is separate from this whole development.
So your main reason behind it is for distribution?
Yes, because it's not like it's not like they're going to be, unless there's a mutation that requires them to re-engineer the mRNA vaccine itself.
Okay. Well, don't they have some friends in Switzerland and Laos that can help them?
If it happens, but the thing is that when they spin out into a new organization, it's going to fix the fundamental issue of being able to partner with other organizations and get this thing out there as fast as possible, rather than having everyone just going all hands on deck on something that's after they have basically done 80% of it, they just need to get this thing out there, they've made it, they've passed the clinical testing. It would be, why not just have somebody who's focused on that last kind of distribution model, which is different from their core making the actual tech aspect, because they won't need distribution on this scale and this area until the next pandemic happens, in which case this spin out will be useful.
Okay.
But Moderna, as we said, is a startup. It has limited resources available. If they spin off, they'll have to direct a lot of their resources that they are also invested in developing the other 10 different products that we're talking about. Spinning off means.
So did you say they should or should not spin off? Should not. And it's because they're such a small startup, they don't have the resources.
They don't have the resources. Directing would mean not just the money, even other resources directing towards one dedicated COVID startup, and then Also, pandemic from the past references, we've seen that it doesn't last longer, it has to end. So spinning off means that you're dedicating an entire arm which might or might not have a future ahead.
Okay. No, because they're still in panic mode right now for the pandemic, aren't they?
Yeah.
Actually, because they're in panic mode because of the pandemic, they could actually get a lot more funding directly just to deal with this. Now, like they already got.
So if you had a separate division, more funding could come to them.
Yeah, I think they would get a lot more funding. People actually pivoted to do something pandemic related just because there was so much pandemic related funding going on, especially in the early time when everybody's freaking out what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, they were throwing, I mean, they got almost $1 billion thrown at them and they're just one of many companies.
Yeah, and they could get even more because they're so far ahead of the curve right now. They've already made this thing. They're so close. So while long term, theoretically, like if they didn't have so much attention, it would be costly. Right now, it could be even better for them to spin this thing out and get more money, more attention, and really leverage the the spotlight.
Okay. Now, Dev, what did you say? Spin off or not spin off?
I think they should.
They should spin it off.
Yeah.
And what was your reasoning behind it?
I think like most of the reasons that she said that if they do spin it off and make it into like a separate unit, then
microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could actually get more funding for it.
So more funding is the reasoning. All right. And Patrice, what did you say? Spin off or not spin off?
So for me, I said that they should not spin off
Should not spin
because the technology had a lot of potential. It just not should stick when it's just the COVID because it's a one-time thing, and if they want to utilize the full potential, whatever is going on in their organization with how they structured it, they need another pen. But they have a lot of potential.
More than one time
Can we
thing.
define what
Should or should not?
Can we define what spin-off means in this case?
Okay, if we're gonna go back to that, we're in trouble, but should they separate? Let's use that word.
There are a million ways to do it. Having a different organization works differently. Having it as a separate unit or a department works differently. And hence, I'm asking this question. What do we mean when we say spin-off? If we don't have the definition right,
Should Moderna separate a unit? Is that better?
Could we have it that in any aspect? Because if we're saying like separate unit, separate department, separate company, they all.
All right, we're gonna have to go back to the beginning. I thought we had this fixed. Stay together or separate apart. Division, unit, whatever you wanna call it, all right? Did you say yes or no to that? I hope you answered it in the case.
unit, yes. Company, no.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll read it closely. Yes or no, should they spin off or not?
No.
They should not, why?
I think strategically the goal is not necessarily the full distribution of the COVID vaccine. I think the CDO, chief digital officer, said that he always thought Moderna was going to be a digital company, right? And
Right.
we've seen them do a lot with automation, and they invested heavily in creating this platform. So I think that the actual eventual goal of this company is for them to build a platform that they could potentially commercialize and market to other larger companies that can't do it at the same speed or accelerated pace that they're doing it now. I think long term, that's the goal is for them to basically sell the platform. And if they spin off, they won't be able to.
It will hurt that effort to build a platform, okay? Did you say spin off or not spin off?
Do not spin off.
Not spin off. Why should they not spin off?
I think as a case that is a competitive advantage they had is as a shared infrastructure and a shared platform. And as a startup, I agree with Avantika that given they have limited resources, I think they shouldn't give up their competitive advantage. That's a core to their business. And also, given Moderna serving as a platform, they frame it as like a app or a software. They will be able to carry the same technology to other user cases. What if the pandemic is over as quick as in 1 year? What are they gonna do with the unit, given they need to spend resources on spin off? So, yeah.
Just say yes or no, spin off or not spin off.
I said no.
Why?
In the case they describe, basically developing this vaccine as a routine endeavor. It doesn't seem like you should spin off a new company or organization if something is defined as a routine endeavor. I also think that Moderna didn't really have the size that separating makes sense at this point. It was 1,800 employees.
Well, they got $1 billion thrown at them just in the last 60 days.
That's great, but I mean, the number of employees is still really low. I think when you see like companies splitting into like different divisions, it's usually because, not always, but a lot of times because it's large. So like Google has like Moonshot and then a lot of other orgs within Google.
Which, by the way, Moonshot and X or whatever it's called now is a completely separate, they put it in another building.
100%.
Across the 101.
Yeah.
My badge didn't even work in it. Like you'd have to have a special thing just to get in the building.
Right. And I think the primary advantage of that is because Google's, you know, now 123,000
So
employees.
because Google was bigger and has tons of money and lots of employees, it was a good thing to spin off.
Yeah, because I mean, the bigger the company gets, almost by necessity, there's going to be more bureaucracy that comes.
Let me ask you this, Evan. If this is 10 years in the future, we're in 2030, this company's a household name, they're as big as any pharma, Pfizer, Moderna, or GlaxoSmithKline, you know, you got 500,000 people working here. An incident came up like this again. Would you spin it off then?
I think if the current company structure was such that decision making slowed to the point,
like if it got too bureaucratic.
Exactly, that it'd be advantageous to have a separate division, then sure. But I don't think that'll be the case with Moderna, just based on the way that they're structured currently.
All right, makes sense. Let's take a poll. Who said they should spin off? Or I'd say separate. Let's say separate. So we have separate. Why should they actually, let's go to you, Samantha. Why should they separate? Oh, we have one.
Is it on? Yeah. So something which I wrote is like it would end up helping them kind of concentrating the expertise in one section itself,
which is a good thing.
Yeah, which is a good thing
because you got to put all your resources for COVID-19.
It streamline the overall process as well. Like if you concentrated in one unit for like solving COVID-related problems, you'll have the overall structure in place. You'll have the same team, and then everybody would be kind of focusing on that particular problem. So yeah,
okay. Who said they should not spin off on COVID? Okay, why did you say they should not spin off?
So I think that
Microphone.
There will be less incentives.
Less incentives?
Synergy.
Synergy, okay,
Yeah.
go further.
And also, it would be very difficult for them to streamline their current structure if they spin off, right? There will be loss.
You mean difficult to actually do it?
Yes, and there will be loss in synergy. I also did say that there what's it called? There will be an operational complexity. Yeah.
So, too much complexity.
Yes, complexity. Yes.
Okay, Landon, what'd you say?
So I said similar to some other folks have said. I don't believe that the split would be in their best interest. I think like on one hand, for a mature company, that division could allow them to maybe specialize in something that they've now identified as being like a core business driver, this commercialization of mRNA technology. But they're a startup, and at the end of the day, like
if we had Evan's question to you, there was big as Google, tons of people, unlimited money, would you do it then?
yeah, definitely. Because I think then they have the resources to allocate towards things that they've proven to be winners. But in their case, they're still a startup. They have limited resources. The beauty of the digital platform is that they should be quick to pivot if they do identify additional use cases. But given that they've identified this to be a proven winner, why not just continue doing what works essentially?
As their current size.
Exactly.
All right, I like that. This is some good discussion. I appreciate this. This is a key question here because what was he even said in the case, like what was he worried about if they spun off of COVID-19? He said it in the case.
They don't want to be known as a COVID.
Yeah, like we all know the household name Moderna now, do we not? We didn't know it in 2019. Do you really want to be known as, oh, Moderna? Yeah, that's that COVID company. Do you think he built this company to be a one trick pony? I don't think so. Not after this. We didn't hear about their investor. Was it Flagship? Mm-hmm. Tell me quickly about Flagship because I don't want to go into it since it wasn't brought up, but I want to understand who is this person? Why are they on the case? Quickly, anyone.
Flagship was basically unusual sort of venture accelerator program where they would start out by asking deep questions that could potentially lead to groundbreaking research. Then they would look into it and see, okay, where is it going? And then they would kind of keep, when it started to show success, they kind of put more resources to it. Like it sort of started out as a project from this Flagship program. And then when they realized, yeah, this is really something, they spun it out into a full company and started getting other people who had useful. industry connections or had the right skill set for this.
Yeah, didn't they have a process where it'd be something like new idea and then
Experiment.
prototype co and then new co and then growth co once it went to.
They describe it as like a Darwinian evolutionary process.
All right, so they had some investor here that would invest in this. What was their main point about doing this? They didn't want to be one trick pony investors, right?
Like a fundamental, like disruptive technology that they're making something.
Yeah, and that was this here. This was the whole mRNA thing. It's we're going to use a protein inside a lipid to deliver instructions so the body makes its own. And guess what? This is going to act like a platform. Why are investors so keen on platforms? And by the way, you hear that all the time in Sand Hill Road. What's so good about a platform?
Well, in this case, they're hoping to be kind of like horizontal. They don't want to be virus specific. They want to be able to address.
Absolutely. Why?
It's much more scalable.
And
Oh,
scalable, good, yes.
scalable. Oh,
Yeah, you guys can leave the mic on, it doesn't matter, but.
it's much more scalable. You can apply it across industries. Yeah.
Any disease should do this, right? How did they do this in 30 days? Did they like come up with some amazing formula? No, they already had this built. It was ready to go. Thank goodness, it was like, wow, they're like ready to go here. They put it in the plan. So if you have this data platform, if you have a platform approach to everything you do, if you have digitized everything in the process, you have created automation islands that can be digitized individually so it doesn't mess up the whole process. And you put in a key part of your process that actually goes all the way to the very end, which is just the production. Even though it's not a big plant, you perfect the production process. You can give it out, sell it out, license it out to these other folks to help you get scale in production. That's a pretty good darn deal, isn't it? So what's the value? What's the heart of the golden nugget inside Moderna? I just went through that thing. What's the
Interoperability across different, they can apply the foundation to all these different types of medicines and drugs that they're developing, so that they're not pigeonholed into one drug, but they can keep and continue iterating and developing new ones.
You've got a process ready to go at a moment's notice for when the next pandemic happens, and there will be another one, unfortunately. Your systems are set. I mean, they didn't even blink at this. They're like, oh yeah, well, here you go. 30 days later, it's ready. This was just normal business process for them. This was like no big deal for them. I mean, it was insane how if you have that process and if you had this down pat, which I kind of think they do, don't you? They're pretty darn good at it. I think, wasn't it 70, 80% had been automated at the time of the case? They'd already gone through, they'd done a bunch of these automation islands. They used off-the-shelf software not for the normal stuff, but where it meant stuff like what they do, like creating some type of teeny tiny protein inside a teeny tiny lipid, which is extremely difficult. They owned that and they perfected it in-house. That's a good thing. If the benefit is that platform, ask yourself this question again. Should they spin off one piece within that platform? This is the heart. And by the way, I'm going to look at everybody who made your arguments. You can go either way. There's just no wrong answer in a case analysis. But Moderna did not spin it off. Bancel's big issue was, he said, if we do spin this off, and they contemplated it pretty heavily, was we'll lose this shared information, shared knowledge, shared platform model. Because guess what? I mean, remember, this is 2020. You're just under tremendous pressure. You should put all your resources on that. He basically said, no, we are not. This is just yet another one. It's not a big deal. Matter of fact, we did it back on February 7th. Our job was done February 7th. Everything else is just steps in the process. We did this in less than 30 days for you guys. Now, let us get back to work. And maybe next time this will be 15 days or 5 days or 2 days. They even use the analogy of an iPhone platform, I think, like the Apple Store. Here's the rules to play in the Apple Store. Here's the rules to play in the Google Play Store. hey, all you software developers, follow these rules, you can play in the store. They're building this platform, and why this is so important on venture capitalists, they love platforms. This is not a one-trick shot. The next pandemic that comes along, they're probably going to be the number one folks that did it. They had the first one this time. So let me just follow up with you. They had $0, and I called the guy that wrote this case in Boston last year or 2 years ago to get this information. They had zero revenue when this case was out. They ended up with 8.5 billion last year. They were doing a Asian expansion with subsidiaries in Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan. And the reason they did it in Hong Kong was, why do you guess?
SARS?
No, SARS and MERS were before. By the way, they knew about that, but why in Hong Kong? American company, you put a subsidiary in Hong Kong. Why would you do that?
Can't do it in China. Can't do it in China, so you would do it in Hong Kong.
This is the tie-in to China and the Chinese market. And it's still an unusual marketplace over there. Have you guys been to China, been to Hong Kong? Do you understand kind of the craziness of the relationships there? Try to make a swing through. It's a good business piece leader for you, but they really wanted that as their tie-in to Chinese market. And I don't think they're still selling Moderna vaccines in China. And it's been proven. They even called the Chinese government and said, please take it. So think about some of the dynamics that are there. They had existing ones in South Korea, Japan, and Australia, which had a total of 24 employees across those three divisions. But they could then make the relationships on the local piece. The hope is they wanted to set up one Asian manufacturing facility. So they had one in Norwood, they wanted one in Asia. And they were building a UK research center. They said that was very likely last time I talked to them. So they're trying to make this like a system that they can just turn on the machine and let it go. And the investors are very happy. It's done very, very well for them. And thank goodness for the people of Earth, because it really helped us out in 2020. Sharp company, really different way of thinking, different way to do it. He even calls himself more a tech company that just happens to do pharma. This is the power of utilizing technologies and putting it into a business process. This is what I'm trying to get out of this entire class. So I wanted to do this case first. It's just a really high quality example of how a business executive can kind of think through the business processes, whatever business, it could work for any of them, and apply it, in this case, just to pharmaceuticals. You had your hand up. Do you want to say a comment?
Yes, but I think you kind of covered some of it. I was just gonna say that, like, again, back to the platform, while they do, drugs and vaccines, this business process automation can be applied in multiple industries. So like the actual addressable market for this is huge if they actually make the platform work.
I agree. They're ready to go for that. And by the way, the big one is not pandemic vaccines or coronavirus vaccines. It's cancer. And they already had 2 cancer. That is the moneymaker. And I believe in your lifetime, maybe not in mine, we will solve cancer. It's just an alteration of cell structure within the body. We just don't quite get it. And the crazy thing with mRNA, I mean, we've had that technology for over 10 years. It's never gone into someone's arm in production. COVID forced it. The world changed after that. We will probably have all drug distributions in the future, at least a lot of them, go through an mRNA. It's just basically like software telling the body what to do to go fight that virus. And isn't it amazing how they've been pushing for 10 years, try this out, and then all of a sudden, okay, we'll try it. Wow, it works really well. Kind of think through, and relationships with the right level, with Dr. Fauci and others, those help. So as a business leader, you gotta be juggling all these things. But great case there for him. All right, thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it. Good discussion. Let's take a break, all right? 15 minutes or so? Okay, let's take a break and come back. Thank you for the discussion. Good discussion. I hope we got a lot out of it. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. By the way, we always have more material than we can possibly cover. That's why I started doing some videos out on the website. I'm going to finish this part because worked so well with our discussion yesterday with crossing the chasm. I want to talk to you about Big Bang destruction. Then we're going to jump over into the theory of disruptive innovation. So let me just finish this off from yesterday. Remember we talked about that bell-shaped curve when you get the early adopters and then you finally get the majority and so many companies fall within this chasm here. That's a big piece. You kind of run out of cash. There's another theory. This is another book. I'm not going to tell you to put this on the list. It's a little more detailed, but if you have extra time, yeah, throw it on your list. Especially if you're in tech. If you're in tech, I would say read it. If you're in other industries, maybe not so much. But it's a good concept to understand because yesterday we talked about this process of jumping from one field to the next and going over. Sometimes in tech, as crazy and fast as it goes, that shrinks even faster. And I'm going to use OpenAI as one. It came out on November 30th, 2021, hasn't even been out a year. And by January, it had more users than I think any other application that had been released ever in history. Like it was incredible. I think I got my account December 6th. So sometimes in technology, you have this. It still looks like the bell curve, except it's more like a stick. It goes up so straight. It's ridiculous. And the reason this is so important for business leaders to understand is sometimes these timeframes get compressed so much, you've got to jump between different types of management styles. So if you're in tech, this is extremely important because it's happened, sometimes in pharmaceutical it'll happen this fast, but not really. You'll go from trial users, people just giving it a shot, to getting everyone all at once, which completely changes some of the business plans that you need to do. And the curve looks like this. You end up getting a few people, making some comments like OpenAI. It gets released, and then suddenly it's all over the news. And even, mom and dad are downloading OpenAI and getting an account. I'm like, what? How did you even hear about it? Well, I heard it can answer anything, that type of thing. So it just takes off ridiculously. And then you do see this kind of lopsided because it jumps. And then it just slowly, you might get mom and dad down here, but still, that's like less than 30 days later. Like it's still a long process. And this is called Big Bang. And so there's some things about Big Bang disruptors, which hopefully you will be one. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have. And if you're an innovator and you come out with something really cool, they can create all kinds of disasters in running the company. That's what this is talking about. It's usually done digitally. Rarely can you scale a manufacturing firm this way, but a digital firm, no problem. This happens all the time. And you can see here 3 devastating features: unencumbered development, unconstrained growth, and undisciplined strategy, because it happens so quickly. So a good example is when we went from these GPS devices to Google Maps, their business changed overnight. We used to buy those Garmin things. I don't know if you remember, they were like full-fledged devices about the size of a phone, and everyone had one back then. I use this one, even though it's a little old, but it makes total sense. Used to, you'd go to an arcade place and have pinball machines and physical foosball, all that kind of stuff. There's still some, they're kind of old school in some of the sports bars. And look what happened to them with units sold versus when the PlayStation came out. Suddenly you had a platform, PlayStation, with a myriad of games from a ton of different developers. Same thing with Xbox or any of the gaming platforms. Suddenly, if you played games, you had this unlimited amount of supply in it. And so why would you play pinball anymore? And those were physical devices and machines. Physical devices and machines that, that manufacturer, multiple manufacturers had to worry about. And so you see this type of regular, pace. You're running a very small firm. You don't know what's going to happen. And then you get some big bang. Sorry. Okay, you get some big bang that happens, and then the next thing you get is the big crunch, and then it's down to nothing. You're shut down, basically. And in this process, there's different pieces you want to see. So the key thing here is when you're starting this firm, you've got a winner. You have something that's going to take off. This is significant foresight. These are entrepreneurs that really see something. The YouTube guys were like this, and that's why they sold to Google so quickly. They knew they could never scale once it took off. But you have foresight and you understand what's happening. Once you recognize that you're in the Big Bang, remember we talked about yesterday and think you were asking me, when do you know when you're at that pivot point in the curve? When you have difficulty or craziness in trying to supply every order that you have, you've hit the inflection point. At this point, you switch management styles. Don't worry about adding new features and don't worry about putting more things in it. Just get out whatever you have. When you get in Big Bang Theory, the Big Bang of the bell curve, at this point, your management style changes to doing everything and opening every distribution channel, every partnership you can get to get the product out. The reason being is it's going to die off just as quickly. And at this point, your management style has to change to shutting down the company. They'll call it asset freedom here, where you start all those things that you ramped up, all those people that you might have hired. If you're in a manufacturing facility, shut down the manufacturing, get it sold off before it loses value. And you actually switch to just eliminating the pieces of the business, get your money back to the investors, because it's going to be over when you get out here. And this is what we call game mastery. Like you've actually ramped up the company super fast and you've ramped it down almost as fast and got out of the game, taken that cash and invested in the next big thing. That's usually the bet that you're having to go through. And so you see these disciplines kind of change as you go through different changes. And so you have some conventional wisdoms of, focus on the discipline, get to the early adopters. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing that. And then, figure out what your target markets are going to be. Wow. There's nothing touching this. I apologize. I'm going to ask David when he comes back in here the next time. Into these big bangs where it's about doing everything all at once. You actually have to go through all the business build processes all at once to make this happen. So, and basically, you don't really try to explode. You're just trying to get the product out and get them delighted as first. And it's the shift of how you're going to do the approach. That's kind of the heart of this big bang disruption model that I wanted to get through you. And why this is seen more and more is because we're in such a creative economy. Things get hot or not very quickly. You know what I mean? Like there are some things that like suddenly everybody's using them and then 6 months later you haven't heard of them again. But a lot of businesses have made a lot of money on very short snippet things that are out there. I would say like a TikTok thing that everybody does and then 6 months later nobody's doing it. Businesses can make money off of that as well by creating some new thing that's the hot new thing. Maybe it's Ugg boots or they go get hot and then all of a sudden like, ooh, I wouldn't be seen dead in those. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing with the creative economy. And we're getting more and more of that. That's why I wanted to bring that out. It's kind of a last piece to that piece I wanted to bring to you with the leadership curve. Okay. So I wanted to bring that out. All right. So we were going to talk about innovative approaches. I'm going to put that on hold just in case we have time to get to it today. Maybe, and by the way, I keep all this stacked at the end. We might get to it on our last session because I want to jump over here. Number one, to show this with the technology convergence. I gave this to you guys on a video on the website. I have all the slides here and I put them in because it's the same slides I use in the video. So you'll have a copy. Okay, so they're going to be in there. I stopped here for a second. Any questions on that video? Anything you want to bring up? I have all the slides. We're good? Okay. Then there was a second one that I did. Not on governance, but on standards and platforms. And this related directly to what we talked about today with the platform business and why investors love platform businesses and why they want to build a platform. So I get a lot of VC pitches these days and it's like, we are the Uber of blank. Everybody wants to be that platform like an Uber. We're going to connect people and just take a percentage of the revenue there. Any questions on the standards or platforms video that we saw? Okay. So again, those slides are here so you have a copy. I try to take the ones that are most simplistic to understand and put it in a video format. Okay. So today I want to talk to you about the theory of disruptive innovation. And I could say Moderna was in this piece too. I don't know. It's usually what they do was just a whole nother way of doing the business. But anybody heard of this before? You've heard of it. Have you read the book?
We had a case on it, right? Or
You had a case on it. Okay, in which class?
didn't we read a case or an article about it for this class?
One of the.
Oh, so you get it from me then?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then good, we should talk about it. Okay, I thought it was another class, yes.
I have a question. So,
Okay,
let's say Moderna had like an exact same competitor like Moderna. So
well, they did, BioNTech.
but
BioNTech was the exact same competitor.
yeah, so would
Remember what solved COVID for us was mRNA technology, that concept that had been around for a decade. But thank goodness we got it, yes.
yeah, so what impact would it have on the decision of spinning out? Like,
That there's a competitor?
yeah, if they are also like going into the market at the very same time and like they are spinning out on their own as well, like would that change the decision for Moderna?
Well, my hope, if you were the CEO of Moderna, you're asking an internal operational question. Should we do something or not? The way we're structured inside really shouldn't have much to do with the competitor. You're going to have to compete with that competitor no matter which way you do it. This is about how's the best way to organize and run the business operationally using the things that I know. And overall, in general, we're saying, no, you should not spin it off. Not because it wasn't a bad idea, not because it'd be, get more money or be faster, but mainly because it would mess up the rest of the business because we would lose that learning process that we built the entire company on, this platform business. It'd be like breaking off part of the platform. Platform would still be strong, but it'd be weaker than it was before. That really has nothing to do with what a competitor's doing. There definitely have competitors. You will always have competitors in whatever market, but this is a structural issue we have to figure out internally. Okay. All right. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about, because again, yesterday's class was all about innovation pieces. Disruptors are innovators, but not all innovators are disruptors. Key question to kind of bring in there, because disruption takes place in an existing market that's happening that needs to get disrupted. And usually when there's a disruption, it can be destructive and creative at the same time. Usually it's destructive for the incumbent, the big, lethargic, old, stodgy, been out there forever company, and it's really good for the startup. However, most startups fail. Majority of startups fail. And that's okay, by the way. And when we do venture capital investing, if a person has 2 or 3 failures, we actually give her more money than we do the person that's the first time. She knows more. She's been through the process. She knows it's going to happen. Even if the idea is maybe not as strong, she has a better chance of success. So 3 or 4 failures under your belt's not a bad thing, actually. But tends to, the old guard gets destructed, the new person comes in. So here's the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. This I would say absolutely put on your reading list. Try to read it over the winter break even, because this will help you in all your other classes. Clayton Christensen, he died 2 years ago, I think, MBA professor from Harvard. Great guy. I met him once. Super nice guy. I'm going to give you the synopsis of what his theory is. All right. It's the concept of, if we make something, okay, we all are manufacturers. If we do that every single day and we go into the plant, we keep making these widgets, and I do that every day, I should get better at it, don't you think? Like if I come in and do something every day, if I come in and teach a class every day for 5 days, I'm hoping the 5th day is better than the first day, wouldn't you think? Like whatever you do, if you're doing it every day, you should get better at it, right? Wouldn't you think? With all things being equal. And if you really think about it, like, okay, I don't know, you're sewing a button on a shirt, okay? I don't know, something simple. Your mom showed you how to sew a button on a shirt. The very first one looked awful. But now that, I've done this. Now I know to pull it tight, but not too tight because that breaks the string. You learn things over time, right? We do this as children. We do this as adults. Companies do it as well. And I would think if you got a good team and they're making something every day, they should get better at it. If not, you need a new team. We learn in the process. So this is the concept of, if things are getting better and better over time, we should do it more efficiently, right? And if we can do things more efficiently, it should be cheaper. And if it's cheaper, we can reduce cost, lower the price, get more customers, right? Wouldn't that make sense? This is this concept of deflationary economics, where you can have us go in, do something every day, get better at it, reduce the price, make it a higher quality, get more customers, get more money, fix things, add more machines to the process, make things more automated, and get better and better at it. Our costs should decrease. They should. Hopefully they do. A great example of this is Amazon Web Services. And as senior leaders, especially if you're in a tech-enabled world, you're probably going to be working with AWS, maybe Microsoft Azure, maybe Google's cloud. But they have reduced their price 67 times since 2006 when they first started. So imagine you sign a contract with Amazon and every year your price goes down. And why is it going down? They are getting better and better. They've reduced their electricity usage. They've got cheaper chips. They've taken money and put in better data centers closer to the process, which reduces the network cost, every time the prices keep going cheaper and cheaper. Are you guys already doing your project for Studio yet or not? You are doing, you just started it. Most of you will probably do some kind of digital thing. You'll probably have in your business plan to host the digital process, if nothing else, data storage. And I hope none of you will say, oh yeah, we're gonna need to build out a data center to host this. No, you're probably gonna go with AWS. As a matter of fact, AWS gives you free time on their machines as a student. I don't know if you know that, but you can get as many cycles as you want. It's a great service they offer. So this is a good example, and the price just keeps going down and down and down. They get better and better at the process. So when we're customers and we buy things, like I'm an Amazon customer, technology gets better. I expect my Amazon services to get better. I want faster, I want cheaper, I want better processing, I want lower latency. If I buy laundry detergent from Procter & Gamble and it's Tide, next year's better be cleaner and smell better and clean the whites whiter, and all of our expectations go up. They never stay stagnant. Like, oh yeah, that detergent you gave us in 1950, that's good enough. No, we always want more. Hence the baker's dozen. Give me 12 and throw one extra in, it's my baker's dozen 13th donut. Who doesn't want more in what they do? Expectations keep rising. And guess what? That rises a lot of the times because of what's happening in the competitive market space. If the baker down the street throws in an extra donut for that dozen, guess what? I go down there. And then the other baker, oh, I'll give you an extra donut. They don't want to lose the business. Customer expectations always rise. So an incumbent, the company that's providing your services, will continue to increase functionality over time. And they will say, oh yeah, well, I'll give you 14 donuts. Oh yeah, well, I'll give you 15 donuts for 12. Well, guess what? I don't want 15 donuts. I only wanted a dozen. It's too much. Stop, you're giving me more value, but it's actually less value because then I got to carry extra and throw it away, and I feel like I'm wasting. And so there's a point where the people that are already doing the product and services keep adding more stuff, more bells, more whistles, more features, more colors, more, widgets on the add-on. And it's like, well, this doesn't really help me. I just needed something basic. I used to work at Microsoft. Does everybody have Microsoft Office on their laptop? Anybody not have it? Very few. To me, that's the ideal product for this example. Remember, we needed Word to write stuff, and we needed Excel for a spreadsheet, and we needed to present in PowerPoint. I rarely do a mail merge in Word. Do you guys? Like the little features, and you can concatenate and put a new sliced letter, and then you can concatenate addresses in. Oh my gosh, that's so complicated. I just want a word processor. And Microsoft threw that in. And then they threw pagination in. Then they got so much that the little they went to ribbons instead of drop downs because there's so much stuff in Microsoft Office products. It's like, okay, I will never do that. It's just too much. And the price is like $500. It never did really come down until they went online. So they kept making more and more stuff that I didn't need. I didn't want even. You didn't want. It just got fatter and more bloated, and it took forever to do the upgrade. And this didn't help me at all. So as their services kept increasing, I'm like, okay, wow, you're giving me a bunch of stuff, but it's good, I guess, but it's really no value to me. Whereas some new company comes in and you know what, they're a startup, they're a Google Docs or something. It doesn't quite do everything, the same thing that Microsoft Office does, but they keep working at it and they get better and better over time, just like any other company would do. And eventually they meet my requirement at a lot lower price. And suddenly consumers will be like, well, you know, it's not the old standby, it's not Tide, but you know, Gain's good enough. It smells just fine. Office is, you know, my old standby, but Google Docs, it works and it's free. Like, I'll just use Google Docs. I don't do mail merges. I just need a word processor. So eventually they meet my expectations. So it's inferior at the beginning at a lower price, but once it meets my expectations, and by the way, my expectations are going up at the same time. So they got to keep raising the bar. But eventually they do meet my expectations. And so this concept that Clayton Christensen came up was this idea of disruptive innovation, that these small incumbents, and we always say come from the bottom, they come from underneath, that most CEOs are not looking for. They don't really like, oh, that's not a competitor. They don't really do what we do. And they end up coming up with availability and processes that actually meet the customer demand pretty well. And on this performance trajectory, you can see the demands eventually meet customer needs. And then they realize like, wow, where did our customers go? They went to that other person over there. This is actually the diagram from the book. I give you a simplified version, but this is the one. There's actually a region of which you get most customers. Like, I need you to meet at least this level of quality. And if you can exceed it a little bit, okay, that's fine. If you're below it, I usually don't. But there's always a range of customers, of low-end and high-end customers. Anything above that is extra. There's really not enough market out there that really want that stuff. Maybe the office administrator, he really needs, you know, mail merge on that thing, but he's 1 out of 500 in our office. So, I mean, there is one up there, don't get me wrong, but it's not enough to really make a market for. Sorry. So, this additional work that you do, the price premium doesn't make a difference. So we end up just going with the lower product. Makes it a little bit less. Intel's CEO very famously said at one point, like, oh, we're Intel. We make high quality chips for laptop computers and high-end processors in data centers. And we will never, that little phone thing, oh, come on. It's like, that's a joke. And there's a video still running around of him saying this. Well, guess what? We all have these phones. They're as powerful as the laptop is now. And basically, they had good chips, and their chips got better over time, don't get me wrong, but not good enough. So Apple came in. It was a little bit of a joke at one point. Now their chips are better and faster than Intel's chips. And now they're no longer Intel's customer. And Intel kind of wakes up, as they are now with TSMC and all the money from our government, and saying, hey, we got to get back in this game. And they are jumping back in. Again, they got a little bloated, a little fat. So they're a good example of how this happens. I want to show you this short little 2-minute video. Let me see if it's a direct link. It is not. Don't worry, I keyed it up. And I think this does a really good job of explaining it for you.
How does a small, young company beat an industry giant on its own turf? Through what Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen calls disruptive innovation. It works like this. Big players focus on sustaining innovation, upgrading existing products and services to attract higher paying customers. But soon, they start to ignore all the regular customers who just want simple, low-cost alternatives. That's where the entrepreneurial company jumps in with that basic offering. The big guys stay focused on more profitable customers and begin to overserve, adding bells and whistles no one wants to pay for. Meanwhile, the disruptor improves its product to appeal to more people. By the time the incumbent notices, the disruptor has already started to take over the market. The classic example is the steel mini mills, which first produced low-quality rebar, then moved to sheet steel, stealing business from the large mills that had been dominant. More recent disruptors include car makers like Toyota and Hyundai, which launched with economy models, then added luxury features and brands. The only way for industry giants to fight back is by launching their own disruptive innovations. To succeed, they must treat the project as a separate unit, With a different business model and growth expectations, ask what job do customers need to get done? Segment customers by job, not by product, market size, or demographics. And develop basic, low-cost ways to get the job done. That's how Procter & Gamble came up with Crest White Strips, a cheap do-it-yourself alternative to an expensive dental service. Disruptive innovation creates new markets and reshapes existing ones. To achieve growth in a fast-changing world, you want to be a disruptor. Don't be disrupted.
All right, and one of the things you noticed in there, and why I wanted to show this after we talked about Moderna, was they recommended that you create a separate unit. Did you guys catch that?
Yes.
Sorry. And they said that's the way you'd have to do it. If you are an incumbent, and in this case, if you're the CEO of GlaxoSmithKline and Beecham or Pfizer or which by the way, Pfizer partnered with them, they didn't do this themselves, or Novartis or any of these big companies, you almost have to completely separate them. Didn't you mention this about the bureaucracy of the big firm? Was that you or someone else here? So it was you. Okay, sorry. The concept there was obviously if it gets too big, too bloated around it, like you have to separate it out to get some benefits and features of that, true? In this example, what Clayton Christensen is telling you is that if you have these small young incumbents coming up, and remember, once the momentum is going of a big corporation and you got a whole department that just does one thing, you know, and that's all they see, and they're like, this is their jobs, they're not gonna like eliminate it, and you're like, you know, we need just a light version that doesn't have that, that's cheap. They don't want to hear that. And so a lot of times you have to separate this out in these large enterprises. So this is why we give you so many frameworks and examples inside of business school. Each one could be different. In this case, you just got your lunch eaten by someone coming from underneath and with a lower priced product that actually does good enough. Good enough is plenty for many of the consumers. And so that one you do need to separate off. You would not do that for Moderna. So as an executive, you have to kind of look at this and go, well, this young startup, this other company is creating this little product, but that's like just a teeny tiny market over there. Like, we don't really need to affect that one. Well, guess what? That little teeny tiny market helps them cut their teeth, if you will, helps them figure it out and get the process down pat. Yeah, it's kind of messy at the beginning. It may not be perfect, but they work on it every single day and it gets better. So as a CEO, you're like, well, maybe we should go after that market too. And most executives will look at that market and go, it's too small. It doesn't move the needle for this big company. And there's a point when you have to actually go after and aggressively pursue these smaller markets, even when they don't seem like they're worthy of it, because that will actually help you and enable you to bring those types of innovations into the rest of the enterprise. And this is why they have you go after that. And it's really tough for an executive to say, hey, we're going to take some of our very limited capital and invest it in this teeny tiny thing over here. But a lot of times it's the absolute right thing to do, because the market will switch underneath you and then they're 5 years ahead of you, 3 years ahead of you, 10 years ahead of you, and you have no product to offer in that market. And then you're playing catch up. Kind of how the big pharmas were here after realizing, because they could have been doing mRNA technologies all that time. They just chose not to. It's just a small market. It hasn't been proven. There's no value there yet. We'll let that little Moderna and BioNTech do it. You know, we're not going to waste our time and enter. We got big production drug manufacturing going here. Oh, maybe that wasn't the best decision. So he's asking you to basically decide, you know, like strategically, where do you place your bets? And if you looked at mRNA technology and go, wow, this messaging RNA, get the body to do their own antibody, that might work. It looks good on paper. Let's try it. The big pharmas didn't. So something to think about. Now, you're going to be the smart executive. You come from Cornell. It's like you're going to be in this role of position. You're going to be the one that upsets markets. Thank you. Congratulations. But eventually, you too will become the incumbent after you do that. So you too will have disruptive technology that not only meets high quality demand of customers, but meets the most demanding customer needs ever. What do you do then when you exceed customer expectations, because your team's going to keep adding stuff to make it better and faster and cleaner and nicer and more colorful. What happens then? Because you will eventually get there, yes, sir.
I work for a company that I think like this happened to. So I worked at Robinhood before, and they completely like disrupted like brokerage by like commission free.
What was the name of the company again?
Robinhood.
Robinhood, absolutely. Completely disrupted.
Completely disrupted everything, the IPO, great, whatever. And now there's like over the past year or two, like they're struggling to make money because they just keep adding stuff that like nobody wants. They launched like cash, peer-to-peer, retirement, like just like all like this suite of just kept adding stuff like nobody's interested in any of that. And they have a big problem because they're like, well, where do they go?
Where do they go?
Yeah, they just are, yeah.
What would you recommend they go? Obviously, the adding cash and credit cards and retirement services, that's not working for them.
My idea is like completely ridiculous and radical.
Let's hear it. I love that.
Which is that it should be a kind of social investing platform with like TikTok-esque reels and like a super platform, like where like people like users on the platform share and like financial advice. Like there's obviously like regulatory red tape, but I think it's just like otherwise they're just going to be a cyclical business that depends on like trading revenues, trading volumes, which now they're barely profitable, and they made losses since IPO. And
yeah,
they just like reported earnings. So it's the first time they're profitable. And
they finally did pass profitability.
Yes.
They weren't break even.
No, just this past quarter. Yeah, and like they did it 2 quarters ago, but it was like EBITDA, like it was like a cheap.
Yeah, EBITDA is if you're a startup, you love EBITDA.
Yeah, so I think they need to like completely I don't know.
All right.
Disrupt.
Well, that's good because there's a market there that may not be using Robinhood that you could get through a TikTok-esque type thing. Absolutely. Eventually that will happen with them. It's a good example of this. When that occurs to you and you've reached the high end of the market, you basically have to move the axis of what you're shooting for. You have to go after that non-consumer that you never had before anyway. Sometimes it's usually in another country. Whatever matter what country you're in, if you capture that market, you got that. Let's go for an Asian market where we don't speak the language. It's a completely different culture. We'll try it there. You literally have to move the axis of what you're shooting for to try to do that. But eventually, you do, because you got success in one place. Can we replicate that in another? Especially after you get to that super high point. But yeah, there's a point where you don't do anymore. What we tend to see in that initial thing, and once you get and you've surpassed all the customer expectations, these are just sustaining innovations. Remember we spoke about that yesterday. They're still innovative. It's good that Robinhood added new features and services and capabilities, and I'm sure a couple of people use it, but that's just little sustaining innovations. We want disruptive innovations. Disruptive is where big things happen, markets change, money is made, the shareholders are flushed with cash. This is where we really make changes, and that happens when you change the direction where you're going. You go back to a disruptive innovator. So that's kind of the piece that you want in there. So tell you what, our speaker's going to come on at 4. Do you guys need a break before he gets here? Because okay, so let's see if we can do this in 5 minutes. Take a 5-minute break. Is that all right? Okay. So linear versus platform. I'll go really quickly on this. Honestly, I have no idea why it's doing this. I apologize. We're going to talk, because I want to just go through this really quickly, which I can do in 5 minutes, about disruptive and the linear versus platform. I won't ask this, I'll just tell it. How's that? So we'll go back. So there are 2 main platform business models. One's linear. And one's platform. We're talking a lot about platform today. The linear models is what we think of very typical. You have suppliers that take it to a manufacturer, take it to a distributor, they get it out to the consumers, like right down the line. That's the normal 80-90% of the businesses. Platform businesses play differently, where they actually have multiple pieces and players that play into one another, and people sell on your platform, play on your platform, code to your platform, write to your platform, and you take percentages of all the pieces. They need you as much as you need them. Both of you are in it for the same haul. It's a much better business model. In the video, Harvard Business School mentioned this about steel mills versus PCs. Steel mills were very linear business models. PCs to mainframes, very linear business model. And when it came to Uber, there was this article that came out like, well, is Uber a disruptor? And most people were like, yeah, Uber is extremely disruptive. Well, let's take a look at Uber. When Uber first came out, I mean, the first days, they built their app with this black image with the black car. Remember, you used to see at airports would be a gentleman in a nice black suit holding a sign for Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones. But those limos sat empty most of the time. And every now and then, especially at JFK, they got, hey, you want to ride into the city? Because the guy needed to get back in the city. And it'd be like $15. And you're like, in a limo, 15? Yeah, sure, let's go. Remember they used to walk up to you and ask that? That was before the apps. Because it's a dead vertical. That's where Uber got their start. They said, hey, we got a limited resource here. It's sitting idle, not making any money. Hey, limo driver, would you like to make a little extra money? We got somebody at the airport wants to go to Manhattan. Yeah, I'll sign up for it. And that's how it all started. And it had some impact. But it wasn't really till they got to what we now call Uber X, you know, a little just normal car. That's when it really took off. That's when it really hit. And when it first started, it was slower. It was actually more expensive than a taxi. You got some person in the car that really didn't know where they're going because they didn't integrate maps at the time. Like if you say, take me to my house, Uber driver's never been there. He's like, well, you know, trying to look on the map. Do I turn here? I mean, it was actually an unpleasant experience, but that's the way they started. But they kept working on it. And actually, one thing for you to recognize is, even though Uber was disrupting things then, consumers didn't accept it until it meets that minimum bar standard of that line constantly going up. And it took them a while, but eventually they integrated Google Maps, they got GPS in the car, and things started taking off. And this is where you have this platform business model that really goes, because they didn't have any cars, they didn't have any drivers, they started giving more money to the drivers, and suddenly you got a platform play. So if you ask Uber who their customer was, they said, we have two customers, the driver and the rider. Matter of fact, even though we're riders, the drivers are more their customer. The driver app updates like every week or two. Ours might do once every 6 months if we're lucky. Their whole business model is geared towards that driver. If they don't have drivers, they don't have a business model. And they love those drivers. They treat them extremely well. So to recognize how these changes with that, you got to understand how these platform business models play like that. Why don't we try to make the most productive use of your time? You're paying good money in tuition, and we'll do something until he comes in. How's that sound? We'll stop as soon as he comes in. So why don't we go back and we'll cover one of our topics. It just makes sense. It's silly for us not to utilize our time as effectively as possible. Don't you think? I mean, you guys want value for your money, right? Yeah. So Amit's going to keep an eye on things and just let us know if he comes in. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to this point where we were on linear business models, just to finish this off, because this might have some value for us as well, because I want you to understand the value process behind these platform plays. I think this has value. We'll keep adding some value to you. These platform models are extremely disruptive in marketplaces. I mean, crazy disruptive. And they've become much more popular recently. You know, things like Airbnb connecting people that need a place to stay with someone who's got an extra room. Etsy, Alibaba, Facebook connecting us together. YouTube connecting content creators, content providers, and of course, the advertisers themselves. Part of the reason they're so disruptive is because they have an established community. They already have an established base. So has anybody here used Uber Eats for food delivery? Oh, wow. Did you use Uber car stuff before? You did. And guess what? It was right on your phone and you could do Uber Eats. Matter of fact, Uber's quite innovative on that stuff. They try a lot of things. They at least in my hometown, they did Christmas tree deliveries. They have a service where you can get a guy in his pickup truck and the guy will help you move a couch or something. So you don't only get his truck, but you also get his muscles to help you move. They did something with the local SPCA where you could have kittens brought or puppies brought to your office for like an hour, and they would deliver the puppies, and if I get to play with them at the office and hopefully, adopt one, and then they would take them back. I mean, they've done all kinds of weird things. At Cannes Music Festival, they gave helicopter rides for the rich people. Like, oh, the Uber helicopter, which they did at New York too, didn't they, for a while? So they try these little things because guess what? Uber, they already know Uber. They're already using Uber. So they had this establishment, and it makes them much more extensible. And so Amazon is doing this right now in healthcare. We're all kind of Amazon customers, and we all get pharmaceutical drugs delivered or from CVS or Duane Reade or something. Well, guess what? We already have an account. It's like quick and easy. So the extensibility of these makes these platforms much more disruptive. So Uber started, the town car, then the regular car, then Uber Eats and delivery. Now they do package delivery. Eventually they will do autonomous driving and autonomous delivery. Domino's Pizza was trying to do this, and you'll read about this in the case with autonomous delivery of the pizza, where you get a text and it goes, please walk outside, there's a car waiting. And you walk outside, it's a little van, and you pull up the thing and there's your pizza. Like you just got your name and it knows who you are because your phone is in proximity like a Bluetooth or RFID reader type thing, and it gives you your hot pizza. There's no human there. You just got to walk outside to get it. So things like that is what they're happening. So these disruptive, sorry, I didn't have it on this side. These disruptive linear models, the ones that are traditional, go from one to the other, they have attack position that's much weaker than the platform play. The platform play comes from a position of strength. They already have a built-in market ready to go. You already have the app on your phone. It's just like one slider bar over. This is what is another reason that makes them so competitive in this way. So just a couple leadership imperatives, things to take away. Note that this is increasingly common with these multi-sided platforms. There we go. That is really enabled by technology. It was very difficult to do this before, and that's why you couldn't ever break into an incumbent's marketplace. The other thing you want to do is watch for how these changes occur in the marketplace, sharing versus leasing of ownership. Like, why do I need a car if I can depend on this platform called Lyft or Uber, who gives me what I'm really looking for, which is transport from A to B. Matter of fact, it might even be easier because I don't have to look for parking once I get to B. So different things to work out there for. This kind of helps you see from a multi-sided platform effect if you have a position of strength. And this is why VCs love investing in these platform plays, because they kind of have a built-in model ready to go. Moderna was trying to do this, like if we can just build a platform that can create and generate through on the computer a drug and put it in a lipid and do it in a small factory where we can prove and help to hold that lipid can hold the protein, then we can program it to do anything. Program the molecule, that is. That's where the money is. And then they throw a whole bunch out to trial. Some of them are bound to hit. The other thing you want to look at is about regulation on these multi-sided platforms. Airbnb got in trouble with this. Uber got in trouble with this because they kind of circumvent the normal processes that you have. And that's why even in New York here, I don't think you can do Airbnb anymore. At least you can, but it's really, really difficult. But in the early days, it was, wild game. So, okay, so I wanted to finish that piece off. Further up here. Those were covered in the video. And let's do this. Let's go into the innovation approaches. Now, this was something that we were going to cover in class 1 and we didn't quite have the time approach to it, but innovation is one of the key things that you as a business leader are going to have to work with. I'm going to tell you what, while we're waiting, I'll put my laptop back over here. And there are 3 types of innovation that I want to talk to you about here that as a business leader, you're going to kind of probably deal with. The first is exploration, the second is execution, and the last is exploitation. All innovative processes in the piece. So let's go through these. When you're talking about the exploration phase, this is a management process, trying to figure out what's going to be the next big hot thing. If you're talking about the execution, it's operations. Have you guys had your operations class yet?
We're taking it now.
You're taking it now. Okay. So obviously as a business leader, you got to operate the business. So this is about operational choices. You can still be innovative in the way you do something. Okay, and then the last one is the exploitation, where you're looking at strategic choices. Do we do that? Do we do that? Do we spin off the division? Do we keep it in? You know, either can be an innovational chain. So let's go to the first one. This is the innovation exploration, actively out there, looking for new business opportunities, seeing what might be available there. Here's where you have lots of creative destruction. This is where you're really trying to, you're at just at the start of the S curve. We don't know what's going to win. If you're an incumbent, it's usually an executive that's like, throw some money at that, throw some money at that. So take a top executive and have that person go off on this area and see if they can make something happen. This is the thing with the incumbent companies, if you've been in a big company. And by the way, big companies are not uninnovative. They're quite innovative, actually. They have the money to do it. It's about the levels of bureaucracy, like everyone's mentioning, like sometimes it just holds it back. But if you're, you've gone to my class, you've gone to Cornell, we actually want to do that. So we want to disrupt a few things by throwing some new kinks in the fire and making strategic decisions on what to try. A lot of uncertainty here. Absolutely a lot of uncertainty. You don't throw all of your resources at it, but if you're a big company, you definitely put some towards it. Strategically, management-wise, you decide which ones have the best bet. So concept ideas, brainstorming, idea hunts, power use opportunities. I'll give you this one, aluminum as an example. Aluminum used not to be the thing, steel was always the big thing, but we needed something lighter, stronger, more flexible, generally like a little bit cheaper. We got this kind of from aluminum. And anybody here worked at a big tech company before? Which one? Wayfair, excellent. They out of Chicago?
Boston.
Boston, okay. Anybody else?
Microsoft and Amazon.
Microsoft. And Amazon. Yeah. Okay, I was at Microsoft too. I'm going to use them.
Google and Amazon.
Google and Amazon. Google does this too, I think. I know Amazon does.
PayPal.
PayPal. So when I was at Microsoft, I think they've changed since this is when Bill was the CEO. He would throw money at different groups, same problem, same issue, and say, have at it. Let's see who wins. Here's the money when you get done. And he would pit us against one another. And we would literally do bake-offs. This is what we mean by bake-off alternatives. And you wouldn't have the two groups talk to one another. Did you do any of those when you were there? It was brutal. I mean, we'd go in and present to Bill and you're just, nervous and all. But, you like, here's our business plan. And it's, battle of the bit. And I don't know, Amazon does it too, right? No?
I never did it.
You never did that, okay.
But I'm sure they do.
Didn't PayPal? It's gone out of favor, honestly. Wayfair to do it?
Hackathons, but not.
Hackathons, okay. Hackathons a little bit lighter, yeah. It's gone out of favor because it just pits employees against one another. It's not really a good thing. However, if you got a strong leadership team, you try, let's try it. It's like two friends saying this concert or that concert, they're both going to be good, but tell me why we should do that one versus the other one. If you're good friends, you can handle it. So this has kind of got a little bit out of favor, but it's a good way to do it. Yes.
So my question is yeah, they can innovate, but why don't they pull it off fully? So for instance, Google invented the transformer in 2017. And apparently if they knew what they were sitting on, or if they focused on it, they could have built GPT-3 in 3 years, by 2020, what OpenAI had. Or Satya Nadella was why are we investing billions of dollars in our innovation labs if OpenAI built this and we had to go and buy a stake in them and so on. So I guess my question is they can innovate, but why don't they execute, or why I feel like bureaucracy is a simplistic answer.
It is. So let's talk specifically about the one you have. Does everybody here think Google's a cool, innovative company? You don't. Anybody else? They're not innovative? Google's not innovative.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay, that's just, all right, I'll take that. So Sergey and Larry, when they ran the company, they're the ones that did the Google X shot, moonshots, okay? You brought that up, actually? All right, they separate that off, different building, I couldn't get in and all that kind of stuff. They don't do that anymore. Now that, what's his name? Sundar is in the role. They did the whole, let's break them off, let's separate it out type of thing. And I remember one of my buddies was trying to get over there and he finally got over there and there's like, I'm in X, I'm sorry, like, it was like this big, and it became kind of a hierarchical thing. But also you need that separation to try some innovative things as well. So you're like, well, does it work? Does the break off work? They since stopped doing that. They broke it back in. So yeah, I mean, there are times when you need to do that. You need times to break it off. It's easier in a startup. But how else do you get these brainstorm ideas going? How else do you have that? Somehow you have to remove the people. This is what Clayton Chris's model was so they aren't covered in the bureaucracy. Get them completely separated out, give it a shot. The question for the management is you're like, okay, I got 5 different people here, 5 different ideas. Which one do I place my bets on? If you do the VC model, you give them all a little bit. Go, see what you can do. Google can do that because they have the money. I think part of the issue with the Google moonshot, maybe you can chime in on that, is when they put it off there, they innovated for innovative sake with no business goal in mind. That was a problem. And part of that problem was we just went back to daddy Google and get more money. If you're a startup, you got to figure out a business model and behind it. So that's sometimes where the large companies and their secretive moonshot areas don't make it. Because they're just more money. We're just coming in every day and playing in the lab, which is kind of what Xtert did, right? I think that's why he shut it down. Did you go over there?
No, I never did. But I mean, they build phenomenal stuff, but none of it makes sense.
None of it made it into marketplace. Yeah. By the way, this happened at Microsoft too. At the time I was there in the 90s, we were the #1 R&D. I think we even beat all the pharmaceutical companies. Like we put billions into R&D. And then Ballmer came in like, well, where's the products? And then they finally put a whole bunch of stuff into Microsoft Word and Office from all the automation for voice recognition and stuff. That was their biggest thing that they gave. I'm like, all right, thanks. It didn't really help. Yes.
I used to work at Boston Scientific and I was a founding member of their digital studios, which is a collaboration with the R&D department where we essentially were seeded into the various divisions. Boston Scientific is a biomedical device company, and we would try to help.
Seeded into the R&D division.
Like we were a part of R&D and IT, and we would be seeded into like cardio.
So you were the R&D person
Yeah.
oversitting in our group.
Yeah, and so we were like supposed to be entrepreneurs, and to build the teams, the core team members were actually taught at a Pivotal Labs, which is now owned by VMware, where we would go sit in this office and live like that whole much more technology savvy, like user-centered design, lead iter process. And then when we came back, we had a separate office space that people would have to come talk to us in that space. But I
To
think
actually
most of
monetize it and get it working?
yeah, so that's the problem, like, because it was branded research and development and like exploratory, no one ever wanted to like put dollars on things. And the one product that I wish we had moved forward with, we didn't have like a financial revenue generating model for it. It was an inflammatory bowel, like people who have IBD or IBS, inflammatory bowel, and they have flares, and we were doing data collection and trying to predict flares. But then endoscopy was just like.
Well, my first question as a business leader, what's my target market? How many people have IBS?
Off the top of my head, I totally forgot.
This is like 1 million, 5 million out of the billions on the planet? It's not good enough. I don't care what it is you're playing with. That's a hobby at that point.
Yeah, it was like their own idea that we partnered with their head of the division to do, and then just immediately scrapped because they're like, yeah, actually, we're not interested, and we've done a lot of building.
And well, my hope is the department that brought it to you knew that there was enough people out there to move the marketplace that we should work on this problem for these patients. If not, yeah, I would have killed it instantly.
Yeah, and even we did a companion app for people with pacemakers so that they could see if they had battery and like other general things. But because it wasn't revenue generating, since it was a companion app, it had like no ability to move the needle.
Unless you make pacemakers, it might be an add-on sustaining innovation.
No, it is we do make pacemakers. It was a stating thing.
Okay, so that's just another feature that makes your pacemaker better than somebody else's.
Yeah, but once it was in the market, they just didn't care about iterating on it anymore. So it went from 4 stars to like 2 stars.
Oh, interesting. That's another hand. Okay, so let me go a little bit further on here with the exploration. It tends to be a little bit of a cyclical model here, a circular refinement. So you explore something, you analyze it, you make a refinement, and then you do it again. You do a little bit more exploration from that refined product or service, and you keep going around. And so as a leader, you want to analyze it by technical view, market view, and the competitive view. Wow, why is it never in the room when it does in this room? You know, first of all, do we have something like, okay, say we're doing a pacemaker heart monitoring app on your phone, so you can manage the pacemaker that's inside you. Okay, does the technology compare to there? And then market view, is there power users that want to use this? Who would use this? How big is that marketplace? And what's the competitive? Does anybody even care about that? Like, do we need to know? Like, is the pacemaker like fail maybe 0.00001% of the time? So it doesn't even matter if you actually know the status of it. Like, you've got to ask kind of these same questions as a leader to figure that out. So this next one I want to talk to you about is the execution model of actually executing on this. And this is where your operational expertise has come into play. And this is when we talked about those innovation islands where you have like a set process. And I think Janelle's big issue was, he said, we figured it out, we tested it, we made sure, then we grabbed it, then we digitized it. Then we set it in play and like locked it down as just one of the pieces in a mini of the process. This is something you'll have to do with your people. And what a lot of people will do is give rewards for this, financial rewards, intrinsic rewards, you know, the attaboy awards that you get, because you want your people who are doing the actual operations of your company every day to have, they're the ones that are closest to it. They're the ones that know. They're the ones that come up with the best ideas because they see the problems every day. So give them incentives to do it. But again, this is an iteration process, a refinement process. Toyota with their process, kimchi or something like that, it's got some Japanese name for it. They would take 2 or 3 lines of a production car for, yeah, no, I shouldn't, kimchi's the first one that came to mind, sorry. Korean name, sorry. But they would go take one and they'll say, well, let's take this one line and try it on that one. And the other 7 lines would be fine. What is the name of that process? Do you know? It is a Japanese name, but I never can say it, but it's like, you know, something like that. So they would do it in one at a time. That is a smart system. Yes, that's it. Yes. So their process, it encouraged that, and they do big financial incentives for that, by the way. Matter of fact, anybody on the production line of a Toyota line can stop the whole production line. They gave that power to their people, which I think that's pretty cool. It's pretty innovative there. But you got to set up a culture for that, and Toyota absolutely did. But anybody should be able to speak up, not feel embarrassed, not, you know, oh, you start the whole production line again. You know, if you have that, then it fails. It's got to be a cultural thing where you actually let people have this to do it. And you see this with the agile methodology as well, for those of you in the engineering world. The last one I want to bring up here is the exploitation. And this is where you have the opportunity to go into markets and actually see what you can do in a different pace of scale. So this is where you want to scale the business, meet increasing demand. Once you kind of capture that market, like how do we exploit it to the nth degree to get the most out of it? You'll see this in big companies where they have a distribution model to get them there. And at that point, why don't we just distribute through everybody? Like, even if the revenue isn't as great as it was with your initial model, it's still additional revenue. You still have people that want to get it. And what you'll know is when you're here is you'll see these lower market imitators start to come in, copycats, if you will. So at that point, you know, just exploit what you have and keep going further on. And usually it's an increase of distribution channels. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, I think that's. All right. Sorry, it switches it for me every time as well. So again, you know, adopting the customer, mainstream customer adoption, crossing the chasm, retaining your competitive position, and then of course shaping the competitive environment once you get further down. I want to go back to this one. I want to go for this one up. 5 key principles that you want to think through when you're trying to drive these innovations in your organization. And think of, and this is, by the way, from Clayton Christian's model. Companies depend on customer investment for resources. Yeah, no kidding. You have no resources, you have no development in this piece. A lot of big senior leaders will look at these markets. They're not big enough. Small markets don't solve the growth needs for large companies. They don't move the needle. And you'll hear that term a lot, like this is too small to go after. Well, that's where these small incumbents come from underneath because they are targeted at that market. And they might figure out a better way to do it. And this is why a lot of incumbents will say, wow, what happened at the last minute? And then they've been upended. I think the car industry is doing this right now. They did not think Tesla and the other car makers will make it. I think Tesla might, but Rivian, I don't know. They might not make it. It's really hard to do a car company. But every one of them now is scrambling to figure out how to do electric cars. And so they're coming back and having to figure this out. So I think you're seeing this model where they never put any dollars into it whatsoever. Sorry, this keeps going back to the original. So they have to figure this out now from a position of, not from a position of strength, but a position of weakness, because they're having to do this later on in the end. This is a big one for leaders. You've got someone smart on your team, or you figure it out yourself, and you're like, we need to go for this new market, this new thing called electric cars. Well, how big is the market? How many will buy it? What's going to be the process there? Well, we don't know because we don't have any data on it. And this is a big stumbling block on innovation, because a lot of leaders won't make a decision if someone can't bring them an analysis behind it. So this is a very big stumbling block that you'll also see in big companies about trying to make this work. Another, an organization's capabilities defines its disabilities. What we do may not be what we should do. When you start building out these large organizations, you get a process, you get a model in place. And we don't build electric cars, we build internal combustion engine cars. Well, that's true. That's where your benefits lie. But if you don't move to the next level and do it timely enough, your market's going to get upended. And so you'll see this position like we're not equipped to do it. We can't do this type of thing. Technology supply may not equal market demand. The technology cannot be economically set up to meet the marketplace. Absolutely true. There's a play when you can be too early in the market or too late in the market. Timing is very critical here on which ones that you do. Absolutely here. So a couple of examples of these. So obviously from photographic film to digital film, wire technology to mobile wireless technology, notebook computers to mobile devices, because now this is just as powerful as any of the computers that we had before. I'll just say NASDAQ and the rest to Robinhood, and letting them see how it completely upends. By the way, after they did all the pieces with free trading, and I think Vanguard did it as well, everybody else followed after that. Like the entire industry overnight, everything suddenly trades are free. Like, wow, talk about completely upsetting the market. And Robinhood was the first one of that, right? Sorry. It didn't do this yesterday, did it? I don't know what's By the way, for those of you that were in Professor Finger's class, was it doing this?
No.
No.
No. Oh.
Okay. I'm going to look at my computer later on then. And desktop to play, personal computers for gaming devices, and of course, instruction to online, what I'm doing here. So, okay, so I covered that. We don't have G2 either, right? Okay. Okay, we're going to do this one. I think timing wise, it'll work well. Class number 4 will be our most technical. Now I'm bringing some stuff forward and Mike have it. I usually do this little segment on Kubernetes. Do you guys know what Kubernetes is? Some of you do. Okay, good. I want you to chat me. Others, Still kind of new. Yes, no? Okay. The reason I bring this up, and by the way, we're going to do artificial intelligence too, neural networks and things of that nature. I want you guys to understand about these operational concepts, not at a deep level, but at a managerial level of what this can be and how this works. Now, Kubernetes came from our friends at Google. Now we know who you are. Came from our friends at Google because they have extremely large data centers. This is their one in Belgium, and it's quite complicated to run these things. So they needed processes that can help them figure things out. So they came up with Kubernetes. It's released, they did it in 2014. They released it to all of us, thank goodness, for free in 2015. Now everyone uses this in every data center that's out there. It's part of the Apache Software Foundation, which is a free, open source type of industry conglomerate that people put software packages into. And the thing you want to know about Kubernetes, it helps you with deployment, helps you with scaling, and it helps you with monitoring for these large orchestrational systems. You want to know about this because if you are building something, even in Studio, on whatever process you're going to be in, or you hire Amazon Web Services to host your products and services or whatever it may be, they will be using Kubernetes, and it would affect how you craft the product. So let's talk about this. You guys know what an application is. Pretty simple. Usually in the application, it uses a file server or a web server. It might use load balancers because you have something that people want to go to on the internet, and you're going to need lots of stuff. So you have a load balancer there. And you usually store that on physical servers, you know, some server somewhere up in the cloud, right? But since we're a digitally forward environment, we put that on virtual servers. Can someone explain to us what a virtual server is? My tech people, go ahead, Jason.
Like you can take a physical server and like partition it into many different separate virtual servers. And by like virtualizing the hardware, you can get like more flexibility and serve like a greater amount of customers, since you don't need to have like one physical server per entity. You can now like share one server for many.
Yeah, and does the software think it's one server, or does the software think it's hundreds of servers? Hundreds of servers. So why would you use this? Why don't we just put 100 servers out?
From which point of view? Like from the
let's put it from the owner, not the software point of view.
Okay. It's just a better utilization of your resources.
Yeah. When you put software on a server, it wakes up, does some transaction, and then waits for the next command. Then it wakes up, does that command, waits for the next command. It's a very inefficient process. Virtual servers use that CPU all the time, and they're constantly switching in these virtual servers, 100 or so usually per server, and it's in constant usage. The software doesn't know the difference because the virtualization of the software is doing it under the table. So the software just thinks it's on its own private server, waiting for commands at a moment's notice. So it saves money, saves energy, saves time, better utilization of the resource. Well, we put a load balancer over all of that because we're going to have lots of these servers, probably lots of virtual servers, but there's going to be some physical. You can't do everything virtualized. And we're going to need a network to connect the whole thing, right? To make it work. Imagine if we could just take this and just like Moderna put everything in an innovation island. They took everything, they made it working inside, and then they put a cap on it and said, okay, it's part of the process, don't touch it. We got it tested and fixed. You can do the same thing here. You basically set up your application, do all the testing, add the security features, do whatever you need. And once you get it perfect, put it in a container, a box, if you will. Don't touch it. It's in there. It's working. We've already tested it. Kind of like a shipping container, like you might see at a port. And we're going to have lots of these containers, so we're going to have to identify them, kind of like a little QR code. Well, it's a name tag on this server, and we don't know exactly what's in it, but it's working. It's perfect. You perfected it. Well, once we've got it perfected and we've got it in that server, we can just replicate it because everything in that box is working. And once it's in that box, we can take it to a data center, take it to another data center, copy it to different data centers, ship it around to different data centers, almost like a shipping container. It's standardized. It can go on big boats or on little boats. We don't know what's in the shipping container, but it can hold all kinds of stuff in there because the Kubernetes software really doesn't care what's inside. It just does the magic of copying this box and distributing this box. kind of like on a shipping container. So to do this, you really need like a container platform. There's that word again. Nice, easy way to make all this stuff work. And one of the most popular out there is Docker. And you look at their logo, and sure enough, it looks like a boat with little shipping containers on it. You guys have heard of Docker? Yeah, I don't need you to know the entities, but this shipping platform, basically, if we're going to be moving all these boxes around with stuff, we need like a container orchestration platform, someone that can orchestrate all this stuff that's running around. Well, that's where Kubernetes comes in. That's why Google invested in this, to kind of manage all this monstrosity of software that comes in. And it's like an orchestration platform. Think of it like a conductor, if you will. And a lot of times you'll see this as KAS, K, 8 letters in between S, Kubernetes. So it's a shortened version of it, if you will. And this is the Greek name for helmsman, shipping container helmsman. Makes it easier there. And so it basically configures workloads and configures them with organizational units. And once you get that shipping container brought in, you can actually make it work with other stuff, because usually most applications don't work on their own. They work with the internet, and maybe applications across the internet or the intranet or even other apps. And you can combine these containers and put them together into a pod. Maybe you have two apps that need one another that work together. And once we have the pods, we can just replicate the pods, just like we did the containers. So suddenly you can start moving pods around. It makes it that much easier. So we're going to move these things around, and we're probably going to put them in a data center somewhere. But, you know, we're progressive, so it's not just going to be a data center. It's probably going to be in the cloud data center. And we're probably going to use the big one, AWS. And AWS doesn't have just one data center. They have lots of data centers with all these different things inside them that we can utilize. So we need a way to kind of track this. So we'll pull one out of the shipping container, this platform, just one server is all it really takes, and we'll call it a scheduler. And the scheduler has information of where all you've given it permission to go utilize services. And in this case, we're utilizing AWS. You can utilize one AWS data center, two AWS data centers. Maybe you got business in Asia and Europe, so you have an Asia AWS data center and a European AWS data center. The scheduler knows where all those data centers are that you've bought, you know, services from Amazon, and it can then distribute it where the need is, which makes it much simpler for us to do that. So this is considered a master node. These are considered the slave nodes, if you will. And whatever you need your application to do, you can tell Kubernetes and it'll make it happen for you. So maybe I need to make this super fast. Okay, I don't know how everything in the box is working, but Kubernetes will decide for you. Okay, make lots of them. Give them more CPU. Give them more time and location. Maybe follow the sun around the planet. So first it starts in Europe, and then it goes to the American data centers, then it goes to the Asia data center, and it goes back around. Kubernetes does that for you. You can say, make it highly available. Make it quickly scalable. Maybe I'm Ticketmaster and Taylor Swift concert tickets just went on. I'm going to tell you in advance, make this extremely scalable. It's ready to replicate as many as it needs. When the concert ticket sales go off, it scales it back down again for you. It's dynamic in the way it does it, and it does it for you because you've set everything in that little box, that container, if you will. And since we are a big company, we're not just going to depend on AWS. It's a little risky. We're also going to talk to our friends over at Microsoft and bid it on the Azure platform, multi-cloud platforms. They also have multiple data centers. And maybe we're even bigger, we're going to do it on Google's cloud and all of their data centers. The scheduler looks out across all of those and can actually do this across multiple servers and multiple data centers from multiple companies of the replication of the thing that you put in the container. Really, really smart in the way that it handles these types of things. And we're doing this all using Kubernetes. Google gave it to us for free, if you will, as a download. That's smart. But I'm doing this across Microsoft and Amazon and Google. Well, each one of them have Kubernetes, but it's kind of their own flavor. It's not exactly the same Kubernetes, and they will say, yeah, it kind of works together. And for the most part, it does. but they're each a little bit different because in the competitive marketplace, they each try to differentiate just a little bit more on each one. And so they're like, yeah, this is Kubernetes. So I tell you this because when you're leading a team that's doing this stuff, there will be some potential issues on getting it crisscrossed across multiple data centers. But it is all done through the official base of Kubernetes. So you want to think of this as like, okay, I'm going to go across multiple data centers, but how will it know security-wise and privacy-wise and logistics-wise which is which? So it used something called a stored key. You guys ever use the thing where you sign and you get a digital certificate for your signature for online digital signatures? Same type of thing here. So that you make public. You have a digital certificate on it, and all of these servers get those same certificate, so they know the commands and the requests are still coming from your Kubernetes establishment. So you want to think of Kubernetes as this platform with this stored configuration that does deployment orchestration, it does scaling orchestration, and it does monitoring. And some of the big companies that have their own data center still, they'll use Kubernetes still just to do the monitoring. It has great monitoring capabilities on that. So we have that set up. Okay. Have you guys heard of Snowflake? Yes.
Before we move on, thank you so much for that really great overview. I think there's an opportunity for more inclusive language in the way people discuss certain coding things, like master slave. There's actually a movement towards using like leader or follower, like primary, secondary, instead, but just as an FYI.
I'm sorry?
When you were referring to the nodes, master slave, there's a movement to adapt the way we discuss those things in a code.
Absolutely, primary, secondary. Absolutely, yeah. I get it. Yeah. By the way, do they know the process you're working on for equitability?
No.
Okay, all right. There's a reason why she brought that up. I agree. Good way to put it. Yeah, I should not necessarily follow what they call. Absolutely, good point. Thank you. Good point. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
What is the point?
That the terminology I'm using for master and slave is probably not appropriate.
Right.
The point was the terminology I'm using to describe the master node and the subordinates nodes is not appropriate.
That's how it's done.
I know that's how it's called, but well, somebody might not like it. Primary node, secondary node. We'll call it that. But yeah, the terminology is still, that they call it a master node. It's the one that knows where everything else is. So, good point. I agree. Absolutely. Okay. I want to bring this up to you because it's more of a manager. Have you guys heard of Snowflake? Okay, you've heard of you have not heard of it. Okay. A couple, just real quickly on this. A lot of times, you will go, and I think you're probably going to be doing this in studio. You'll go to AWS and set up. Is that part of what they give you access to AWS in studio? Do you know yet? Okay. Usually they give Cornell students access. A lot of companies have decided, hey, maybe we don't want to even do that, or we don't want to go across these multiple vendors here, and you have to go to AWS, you have to go to Microsoft, you have to go to Google, all set up contracts, coordinate with them, which data centers do you want, how scalable and reliable do you want it, do you want to fail over to another site or not, because there are rules, like if it's in Germany, it has to stay in Germany, if it's in India, the data has to stay in India, so you have to tell, Google and Amazon, this piece of data cannot leave India, cannot leave Germany, stuff like that. Still, you have to set that up. A lot of people say, well, maybe we don't want to do that. So Snowflake is offering what they call data warehouse as a service. Well, they'll do all of that for you and do those configuration setups for you. And so I bring this up, and there's also Yellow Brick is kind of doing this same thing as well. These are the managerial decisions because you're kind of, I hate to say this, but you're basically placing the heart of your business in someone else's hands. You are hoping that Amazon does not go down. And they very famously went down on the East Coast 3 years ago for you couldn't get on Netflix on the East Coast. You remember that? You're at the managerial level. You're going to be deciding which business partners you partner with. Just like Moderna picked the Swiss Lauza to be their partner. It's a strategic decision on who you pick to go with. So Snowflake is one of those. Okay. I wanted to put, maybe I can go to this one. Yeah. So this one, Started in secret in 2012. I think this was the guy from Microsoft that was a big investor in this one. In 2014, it came out. Databricks came out in 2013. And by the way, Snowflake built all on AWS. Now they're on Google and on Microsoft Azure as well, but it was all AWS before. They just were a reseller, if you will, of AWS. Databricks did it with Microsoft Azure. And then you guys heard me talk about Palantir earlier. Palantir is the same type of system that does this, but they do black ops stuff.
Really secretive.
Sorry?
They're really secretive, right? Palantir, they're secretive.
Well, they're not secretive now. They're public. I mean, you can buy stock in them. They were secretive at one point. It's a very known secret joke, but yes. Their biggest customer by far is the US government, which is, Department of Defense. And, their big claim to fame is they found Osama bin Laden using data analytics and said he's right there in that house, we can track him. But we didn't know about it at the time. But they are using a massive amounts of data analytics. They do really incredible stuff, but it's all black ops stuff. Now, what they're doing now is they're selling their built algorithms, all their services to corporations. So all the stuff they perfected since 2015, 2013, whenever they were, they now sell that service to businesses. So if you're Goldman Sachs or General Motors or you're Anthem Healthcare, you can buy their services and discover all kinds of good things. So yeah, they're public now.
Does Peter Thiel run it or not at all?
Sorry?
Peter Thiel, does he run it or?
Yeah, it's his baby.
So he's in charge or?
I don't know. It's a weird. I know he's one of the founders. Peter Thiel's an interesting guy. Yeah, but yeah, he's still involved in it. He's still further built out. The thing that makes this interesting, these are the big players in this data warehouse as a service. They're customers of these guys, they're consumers of these guys, so they're capacity. They're also competitors as well as partners, because you can get these same quote unquote services from Amazon, but they're nowhere near to the level of these guys that they are. So yeah. So that's your guys are going to be deciding who you partner with on these things. That's why I don't bring this up, because you're going to build your platforms on them. Okay, let's stop it there. I'll check in with Chitu. That's very unusual for him, but we'll try to get him back for another one. Okay, we'll just switch some things on the timer. All right, I will see you in 6 days on Friday. We have another case due for Domino's. If you want to volunteer for the Domino's case, please do so soon. First come, first serve. Thank you, Jason, for doing our first one. We'll have the second case on that Saturday, which is Citizens Bank. So I'll look for another volunteer for that as well. All righty. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. And I'm around if you need me.